Chapter 797. In the void, absolute tremor was activated. Nie Tian's eyes released a massive spiritual deterrence that penetrated the demonic energy of the northern underworld and enveloped Mo Biming. At that moment, Mo Biming suddenly felt his divine soul tremble. He could lose control of his mind at any moment. The powerful demonic energy around him disappeared. What a powerful dragon energy! When the crowd saw the dark demonic energy disappear and a figure appear on a green dragon, they could not help but tremble. This was true dragon energy. The dragon energy was vast and overwhelming. Mo Biming die. Nie Tian stepped on the green dragon and moved as fast as lightning. He had forcibly changed the power of heaven and earth not to borrow the spirit energy of heaven and earth, but to attract Mo Biming's attention. At the same time, he opened up a spatial passage for himself. The power of heaven and earth changed. Nie Tian's figure became even faster. In the blink of an eye, he was less than 10 meters away from Mo Biming. Destroy him! With a deep roar, the green dragon under Nie Tian's feet rolled out. A majestic dragon aura wreaked havoc, causing the space around it to tremble. The huge dragon body was like a sword released from a bow as it charged towards Mo Biming. The moment the dragon energy spread, Mo Biming finally reacted, but it was too late. Bang! With a muffled sound, Mo Biming's body was sent flying. Hiss! The crowd gasped when they saw this. They suddenly felt a chill run down their spines and their hearts trembled. Nie Tian actually sent Mo Biming flying. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, no one would have believed it. A 4th-level heavenly evolution warrior had sent a 5th-level heaven human warrior flying. This scene was too strange. Mo Biming was sent flying by the green dragon. His figure flew back hundreds of meters before he finally stabilized his body in the air. However, he was currently covered in blood and looked very wretched. Impossible! Mo Biming stood rooted to the ground. After a few seconds, he finally reacted and roared at the sky. He was a 5th-level heaven human warrior, but he had been sent flying by a 4th-level heavenly evolution warrior. This was absolutely intolerable humiliation. With a furious roar, Mo Biming's body trembled and the blood stains on his body were swept away. A violent rage spread through the void. At the same time, Nie Tian's body trembled slightly and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Just now, he had forcefully rushed forward against the northern underworld demonic chi, and was injured quite badly. A warrior in the 5th level of the heaven realm is indeed powerful. Nie Tian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and smiled bitterly. In order to resist Mo Biming's palm, not only had he used absolute tremor, he had also used Spirit Dragon Seal. It could be said that he had used his 2 most terrifying trump cards. Even so, he was still unable to injure Mo Biming. Mo Biming took on the green dragon's power head-on. Although it looked like he was in a sorry state, they were all superficial wounds. He was basically unharmed. The strength of a 5th-level heaven human martial artist was truly terrifying. Nie Tian's absolute tremor had also become much stronger, but he had only been able to control Mo Biming for an instant. From this, it could be seen just how terrifying the latter was. It was no exaggeration to say that if the person who was fighting against Nie Tian was Sorrow Mo, the latter would definitely die. At this time, Xian Tianluo and Xian Qiu were stunned. Their gazes froze as they stared at Nie Tian. A name appeared in their minds at the same time: 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. Nie Tian had just used the dragon ring, so he was obviously from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. Nie Tian was from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. This was something that Xian Tianluo had never dreamed of. No wonder. After a long while, Xian Tianluo reacted and let out a strange cry. He did not act like an emperor at all. If Nie Tian was from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss, then it made sense that his strength was so strange. The 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss was a behemoth comparable to the Holy Light Dynasty. It was possible for such an organization to cultivate any kind of genius. Nye Tian, I want you dead. Mo Biming had also guessed Nye Tian's identity at this moment, but he did not care at all. With a roar, his figure swooped down and directly rushed toward Nye Tian. Danger! In an instant, the crowd let out a cry of alarm. No one had expected Mo Biming to attack again. Mo Biming, are you crazy? Xian Tianluo screamed. He wanted to take action, but it was too late. In the face of Mo Biming's crazy attack again, Nye Tian had no strength to resist at all. At this moment, even if he used the sky shrouding totem, it would be impossible for him to block Mo Biming's palm. However, there was no fear on Nye Tian's face. Instead, his face was calm. Old man, you've been watching for so long. Are you still not going to make a move? Suddenly, the corners of Nye Tian's mouth curled up into a smile, and he said lightly, "Huh!" In the void, a surprised voice rang out. Immediately after, a smile appeared and said, "Boy, you actually found me." As the voice fell, a huge force appeared. The space around Nye Tian suddenly tightened. Immediately, endless black sand appeared and condensed into a giant black sand hand in the air. Mysterious blood jade sand. When Nye Tian saw this scene, his eyes narrowed. The person in the dark was someone from the Xianyue royal family. Just at the moment when he activated absolute tremor, his insight was exerted to the extreme, and he suddenly saw a person hiding in the void. This person hid very well. If it weren't for Nye Tian's starry eyes, it would have been impossible to discover his existence. However, Nye Tian did not expect that this person was actually someone from the Xianyue royal family. This person's strength was in the 7th heaven realm, stronger than Xian Tianluo. Who was he? Boom! In the void, two giant palms collided. Suddenly, the space trembled and the sky changed color. A majestic wave of air blasted out from the center of the collision, and a pale light appeared. It was the spatial folds formed by the distortion of space. The power of a martial artist in the 5th heaven realm and a martial artist in the 6th heaven realm was so strong that even space could not withstand it. The proud sword wings appeared behind Nye Tian, and his figure quickly retreated thousands of meters away. After a violent tremor, the space finally calmed down. Two figures appeared in front of everyone. One was Mo Biming, and the other was a short and fat old man in black. Who is that person? The eyes of the crowd trembled, and they all exclaimed. This person did not appear before, but at this time, it was as if he had appeared out of thin air. Nye Tian stood in the air, looking at the old man in black, and frowned slightly. This person's appearance was not shocking, but the aura around his body was very terrifying. Mysterious blood feather sand surged around his body, releasing a gloomy aura. Old ancestor. At this time, Xian Tianluo saw the face of the old man in black and exclaimed. The old man in black who suddenly appeared was none other than the Xian family's old ancestor, Xian Yi. Old ancestor? Xian Qiu was slightly stunned. He never knew that the Xian family had an old ancestor. When Nye Tian heard Xian Tianluo's voice, he immediately felt relieved. This old man was the Xian family's old ancestor, so it was reasonable that he was stronger than Xian Tianluo. These old ancestor-level characters usually did not come out. The reason they appeared today was mostly because of Xian Xiao. The Xian family's old ancestor was hidden in the void, and he must have seen everything that had happened. If Nye Tian had not withstood Mo Biming's palm just now, this old ancestor would not have made a move. Chapter 798. Who are you? Mo Biming stood in the air, looking at Xian Yi in astonishment, unable to hide the fear in his eyes. He could feel that Xian Yi had restrained his strength in that palm strike. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to stand here safely. Mo Biming didn't expect that there was someone stronger than Xian Tianluo in the Black Moon Empire. Are you the new Dark North Monarch? Xian Ye's eyes flashed as he asked coldly. So what if I am? Mo Biming felt like a little lamb in a wolf's den being stared at by Xian Yi. A deep sense of helplessness welled up in his heart. Dark North Monarch, you are even more shameless than Gui Shilang. Xian Yi shook his head slightly and said mockingly, you and Nie Tian had an agreement to decide the winner in one move. You were pushed back in that move, so you lost. Since you lost, you have to admit it. Yet you attacked again in front of everyone. You are a disgrace to the heavenly demon cult. Mo Biming's face turned red. He wanted to say something, but couldn't. The old man in front of him seemed to be quite familiar with the heavenly demon cult. He actually knew the previous Dark North Monarch, Gui Shilang. Who are you? Mo Biming forced himself to calm down and asked again. Xian Yi smiled coldly and said, who I am is not important. What is important is that you must leave the Black Moon Empire. As for the bloody death field, close it. His voice was calm, but it carried an inviolable overbearingness. Mo Biming stood rooted to the ground. His face was dark and the muscles on his face twitched. Since Xian Yi dared to say this, he wasn't afraid of the heavenly demon cult's revenge. This time, Mo Biming was going to suffer a big loss. I will tell Gui Shilang about the bloody death field. You should leave now, Xian Yi said calmly, but his eyes were suffocating. Mo Biming's body trembled. Nie Tian was not dead yet. If he left now, he would not be willing. Teacher, let's go. At this moment, Yu Hua walked up and said in a low voice. Xian Yi looked at Yu Hua and asked, you are from the Yu family? Yes. Yu Hua nodded and looked strangely at Xian Yi. Xian Yi looked at Yu Hua with a complicated expression. After a long while, he gently sighed and said, how is Yu Rushuang? You know the leader? Moonlight did a double take, clearly not expecting the old man to know the name of the Sky Demon cult's saint. Yu Hua's eyes trembled when he said Yu. Xian Ye's eyes trembled slightly. When he called out Yu Rushuang's name, his heart also trembled. Yi? Yu yelled. To the Tian Ye's voice. Yu the said to I to Yi to she. Yi. Mo Biming glanced at Xian Yi, knowing that there was no way to salvage the situation. Then, he cast a sinister glance at Nie Tian, and his figure flickered as he disappeared. Yi. Yu yi to Y. To Yi to you I you to Y yi he to. Xian Yi looked at the crowd on the ground and seemed tired. He waved his hand and said, disperse. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd didn't dare to delay any longer and quickly dispersed. Ancestor. Xian Tianluo and Xian Xiu came to Xian Ye's side and bowed to him. Tianluo, leave Xian Xiao to me. Xian Yi nodded and took the unconscious Xian Xiao from Xian Tianluo. From now on, Xian Xiao is no longer the crown prince of the Black Moon Empire. Xian Xiu will be the crown prince. Xian Tianluo and Xian Xiu were stunned. Thank you, ancestor. After a few seconds, Xian Xiu came to his senses and knelt to thank him. Xian Xiu will not let you down. Xian Yi nodded with a smile and didn't say anything else. He turned to Nie Tian and said, Nie Tian, let's talk. Sure. Nie Tian seemed to have expected this. He smiled calmly and said, sure. Nie Tian had exposed too much, especially the spirit dragon ring, which would definitely attract Xian Ye's attention. After a while, Nie Tian and Xian Yi came to a secret place outside the imperial city. Mr. Xian, please say what you want to say. Nie Tian said bluntly. Nie Tian. Xian Yi looked Nie Tian up and down. A strange smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he said, Xian Xiao became what he is now because of you. I know that Xian Xiao and Xian Qiu didn't join forces at all. Xian Xiao didn't send you to the blood death field. Everything was done by you alone. Xian Xiao is just your scapegoat. Am I right? Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed slightly. He hadn't expected Xian Yi to be so shrewd as to guess everything. Don't be nervous. Xian Yi smiled and said, I won't pursue Xian Zhao's matter. Xian Xiao is arrogant and Xian Qiu is gloomy. If I have to choose between the two of them to be the emperor of the Black Moon Empire, I can only choose Xian Qiu. Nie Tian's eyes twitched. Xian Ye's shrewdness far exceeded his expectations. He seemed to have seen through everything. Xian Yi nodded slightly as a hint of seriousness appeared on his face. His gaze became even more oppressive as he said, I won't stop Xianqiu from entering the forbidden land of wind and cloud, but I want you to guarantee that he will come out alive and obtain the inheritance. Mr. Xian, you're making things difficult for me. Nie Tian looked straight at Xian Yi and didn't avoid his gaze. I can protect Xianqiu, but I can't guarantee that he will obtain the inheritance. Perhaps there is no inheritance in the forbidden land of wind and cloud. Nie Tian, you and I are both smart people. Xian Yi smiled cold. These two requests are my bottom line. If you can't do it, the consequences will be severe. I don't care who you are. Be it the Dragon Abyss of Demons or the Divine Martial Hall, this is the Holy Light region. However, this is the Holy Light domain. Since you're here, you must agree to my conditions. Oh! Nie Tian's lips curled up. Looks like I have to agree to your conditions today. You're a smart person. You won't refuse. Xian Yi smiled and said, I want 2 spots to enter the forbidden land of wind and cloud. As for the others, I'll leave it to you. With that, Xian Yi moved and left with Xian Shao. What a cunning old fox! Nie Tian looked in the direction Xian Yi disappeared with a sharp glint in his eyes. Master, that old man is quite powerful. The corpse demon lord chuckled in the chaotic original coffin. Xian Yi was indeed cunning. At least, Nie Tian had never seen someone as cunning as him since his rebirth. It seemed like he had to be careful when dealing with the Black Moon Imperial family in the future. Chapter 799. Black Moon Empire, Black Moon Imperial City, Blacksmith's Guild. What? The patriarch of the Xian family has appeared. A familiar voice came from one of the rooms. It was Huojia. Yes. Beside Huojia, Bai Luo nodded. That old Xian Yi hasn't appeared for 50 to 60 years. I thought he was already in the grave. Huojia chuckled and said, Quick, tell me, why did Xian Yi appear? Bai Luo looked at Huojia's excited face, but his expression was slightly awkward. He said, Teacher, this whole thing is a little complicated. All of this was caused by one person. Caused by one person? Fire Armor smiled as a face appeared in his mind. His expression flickered as he exclaimed, Don't tell me it's Nie Tian again. Yes. Bai Luo's Adam's apple bobbed, and he gulped down his saliva. He then told Fire Armor everything that had happened. Finally, he said, after the patriarch of the Xian family forced the North Nether King to retreat, he took Nie Tian away. Nie Tian and Xian Yi left together? Fire Armor was taken aback by Nie Tian's words. A moment later, he exclaimed, Xian Yi didn't kill that brat, did he? In the past 2 days, Huojia's impression of Nie Tian had changed again and again. He had thought that Nie Tian was a rare mind energy genius. Who knew that Nie Tian was even more talented at causing trouble? First, it was the Yun family, then Crown Prince Xian Shao, then the Bloody Field, and now the patriarch of the Xian family. The level of trouble he caused was rising. Huojia could barely accept it. Previously, Huojia had said that Nie Tian was a hornet's nest. Now, he was saying that Nie Tian was a fighter jet in a hornet's nest. Teacher, don't worry. Bai Luo's mouth twitched. I heard that the patriarch of the Xian family treats Nie Tian well. He even saved Nie Tian's life from the North Nether King. He probably won't kill him. Oh, that's good. Huojia nodded. Then, he shouted, That brat, it's good that he dies at Xian Ye's hands. Then, I can live in peace. Just at this moment, an indifferent voice rang out. Old man Hua, it's not good to curse someone behind their back. As the calm voice faded, a figure pushed open the door and entered. It was none other than Nie Tian. When Huojia saw Nie Tian, although his words were unforgiving, he could not conceal the concern in his eyes. Nie Tian, you're still alive? Although he had only known Nie Tian for a few days, Fire Armor had a very good impression of him. Unknowingly, He had already begun to treat Nie Tian as his disciple. My life is stinky and tough. I won't die anytime soon. Nie Tian laughed and said, It seems like you all know what happened today. We're not the only ones who know. Everyone in Dark Moon City knows. Huojia shouted in an exaggerated manner, his face full of annoyance. Teacher, I'll take my leave first. Bai Luo was very perceptive. He could tell that Nie Tian had something to talk to Huojia about, so he turned around and left. After Bai Luo left, Huojia's gaze immediately became strange. He chuckled and said, Nie Tian, Bai Luo said that you blocked the North Dark King's palm. Is that true? Everyone saw it. Countless pairs of eyes saw it. It's absolutely true. Nie Tian smiled proudly. His tail was about to rise. Tsk. Huojia laughed as he looked at Nie Tian. He said, Nie Tian, you're really shocking me more and more. Nie Tian smiled. Then, his expression turned serious. He said, Elder Hua, I'm looking for you to ask about something. He had come to the Craftsmen's Guild to ask about the heavenly demon cult. Huojia had lived for hundreds of years, so he should be very clear. Yes, ask away. Huojia took a sip of tea to calm himself down. I want to know what kind of organization the heavenly demon cult is. Nie Tian's gaze focused as he asked in a deep voice. Heavenly demon cult. Huojia thought for a while and was stunned. He said, Brat, why are you asking this? You're not thinking of doing something bad again, are you? Nie Tian smiled and said, Mo Biming is a member of the heavenly devil cult. I injured his son and caused him to lose face. I even caused the blood death field to close. He wants nothing more than to tear me to pieces. Of course, I want to know about the heavenly demon cult. That's true. Huojia nodded. Then, his expression turned serious. He said, Speaking of the heavenly demon cult, I have to talk about the Black Moon Empire. The reason why the Black Moon Empire is called the Black Moon Empire is because the empire was founded by two big families, the Xian family and the Yu family. When the Black Moon Empire was founded, there were two emperors called the Xian Sovereign and the Moon Sovereign. However, for some reason, the Xian family and the Yu family had a conflict. At first, the two families wanted to form a marriage alliance to ease the conflict. Who knew that the bride of the Yu family would break off the marriage and elope with someone else? The Xian family was furious, and the two families broke off completely. The two families fought to the death, and the Xian family emerged victorious, wiping out the entire Yu family. Wiping out the entire family? Nie Tian was slightly taken aback. The conflict between the two families had led to the destruction of the other family. It was truly unexpected. After all, the Yu family was a family that had fought alongside the Xian family. Yes. Huojia nodded and said, The entire Yu family was wiped out, but one person survived. It was the girl from the Yu family who eloped with someone after the marriage alliance. In order to avenge the Yu family, she founded the heavenly demon cult. That girl was called Yu Rushuang, right? Nie Tian suddenly asked. HM? Huojia was startled and asked, How did you know? I guessed. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, If my guess is correct, the person who arranged the marriage alliance with Yu Rushuang was the Xian family's ancestor, Xian Yi. Is that so? Huojia glanced suspiciously at Nie Tian, then smiled and said, You know quite a lot, you brat. Nie Tian nodded slightly. He had guessed all this from Xian Yi and Yu Hua's conversation. He hadn't expected that there would be such a story between Xian Yi and Yu Rushuang. No wonder Xian Yi became so unsettled at the mention of Yu Rushuang's name. Huojia sighed and said, In truth, the heavenly demon cult's growth has a lot to do with Xian Yi's indifference. Perhaps Xian Yi felt guilty for what happened back then, so he couldn't bear to destroy the cult. Was it Xian Yi who gave the order to wipe out the entire Yu family? Nie Tian asked curiously. No. Huojia shook his head. Huojia shook his head and said, Back then, Xian Yi was only a prince. The person who ordered the extermination of the Yu family was his father. I see. Nie Tian nodded and asked, how is the heavenly demon cult's power now? It seems that Xian Yi is somewhat wary of them. Chapter 800. North Nether King is one of the 4 kings of the heavenly demon cult. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed in surprise. The strength of the heavenly demon cult had exceeded Nie Tian's expectations. North Nether King was in the 5th level of the celestial being realm, which was on par with Xian Tianluo. However, he was only one of the 4 kings. There were still 2 deputy leaders and a leader above him. This meant that the heavenly demon cult's leader, Yu Rushuang, was definitely not weaker than Xian Yi. Without Xian Yi, the Black Moon Empire would be destroyed by the heavenly demon cult in an instant. It was very strange that Xian Yi had watched the heavenly demon cult grow over the years without doing anything. Xian Yi was clearly not a kind person. Perhaps it was because he loved Yu Rushuang very much. Elder Hua, do you know how strong Yu Rushuang is? Nie Tian asked Hua Jia directly. I don't know. Hua Jia shook his head. 100 years ago, Yu Rushuang appeared in the Black Moon Imperial City once. Back then, she was on par with Xian Yi. Now that 100 years have passed, her strength should be similar to Xian Yi's. Yes. Nie Tian nodded in agreement. The most important thing for a cultivator to cultivate was before the age of 100. After that, the growth of one's strength would slow down. Unless one was a genius or had some kind of fortuitous encounter, the growth of one's strength would be very limited. It seems that there will be a battle between the Black Moon Empire and the heavenly demon cult sooner or later. Nie Tian smiled faintly, a playful smile in his eyes. Little Nie, you've offended the heavenly demon cult. You must be careful in the Black Moon Empire. I don't want to take a corpse as my disciple, Hua Jia reminded Nie Tian. He still wanted to take Nie Tian as his disciple. Nie Tian nodded. Then, he thought of something and asked, Elder Hua, there's one more thing I'd like to ask you. Have you heard of an organization called the Burial Blade Society? The Burial Blade Society? Hua Jia was stunned. Then, his face darkened. Little brat, did you offend the Burial Blade Society too? Nie Tian had a helpless expression as he said, I accidentally killed a member of the Burial Blade Society in the bloody arena. When he was in the blood death field, he killed Leng Shui, and Leng Shui was a member of the Burial Blade Society. Accidentally? Black lines appeared on Fire Armor's face. He suddenly felt like crying, but no tears would come. Is Zhang Dao very strong? Nie Tian was curious when he saw Fire Armor's reaction. Not just very strong. Hua Jia almost shrieked. The Burial Blade Society is an extremely mysterious organization, and its members are all blade users. According to rumors, the Saber Burial Association Saberhead is already a Saber Soul Saber wielder. He is just one step away from comprehending the Saber profundity. The soul of the Saber. Nie Tian was slightly surprised, but then he smiled and said, This strength is indeed very strong. Elder Yi was also a Saber Soul Saber user. Moreover, he had directly leaped from Saber Spirit to Saber Soul, leaping over the realm of Saber Soul. Nie Tian had never seen a situation like Elder Yi's, so he didn't know how he did it. Kid, don't take it lightly. The Burial Blade Society's strength is no weaker than the Heavenly Demon cults, and they are a bigger threat to you than the Heavenly Demon cult. You must be extra careful in the future. Fire Armor was speechless at Nie Tian's attitude. This guy seemed to be indifferent to everything. Elder Hua, don't worry. I'm very careful in everything I do, Nie Tian said confidently with a faint smile. Fire Armor was speechless. Nie Tian had offended so many people and organizations in the past 2 days. If this was called being careful, then wouldn't he poke a hole in the sky if he was not careful? Elder Hua, how's my sword? Nie Tian asked again. In the past few days, it had been very inconvenient for him to fight without the sword Absolute Heaven Slash. Now that his sword principal realm had improved, his combat strength would improve by leaps and bounds if he held the sword absolute heaven slash again. Kid, it's only been 2 days. Do you think it's easy to refine the heavenly black stone? Elder Hua said impatiently. The material of your sword is a bit special. It'll be difficult to fuse it. I'll need at least another half a month to succeed. Half a month, Nie Tian muttered with a helpless expression. He could only say, half a month it is then. Kid, in this half a month, you must behave yourself. Don't go around causing trouble, Fire Armor said solemnly. Don't worry. As long as others don't provoke me, I won't provoke them. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He then stood up and prepared to leave. Fire Armor also stood up. He suddenly smiled strangely and said, Brat, that girl Xian Miao Miao is with you, right? Are you helping her increase her mental strength? Nie Tian nodded and said, Elder Hua, don't worry. After a month, Xian Miao Miao's mental strength will definitely reach rank 35. With that, Nie Tian didn't delay any longer. He turned around and left. This kid is very strange. Seeing how confident he is, does he really have a way to increase his mental strength? Fire Armor muttered as he watched Nie Tian's back. After leaving the Craftsman's Guild, Nie Tian returned to the Yu family. In his room, Nie Tian sat cross-legged and entered a state of cultivation. He told Yu Jiao that he would be cultivating in seclusion for half a month. Although he had only been in the Sumer world for a few days, Nie Tian's experience was very rich. The opponents he encountered and the fierce battles he experienced made him realize that his strength was still too weak. He needed to increase his strength as soon as possible. The art of wind and cloud would begin in 2 months. When that time came, the people from the 5 forces that would enter the forbidden land of wind and cloud would definitely be top-notch martial artists. Even if they were all Heaven Evolution Realm martial artists, Nie Tian still had to be cautious. Moreover, he knew that the most dangerous thing in the forbidden land of wind and cloud was not these people, but the forbidden land itself. The forbidden land of wind and cloud was an ancient ruin. For hundreds of years, no one had walked out of it alive. This showed how dangerous it was. There was another thing that worried Nie Tian. Xian Shao had been taken away by Xian Yi. He didn't know what Xian Yi would do to Xian Shao, but if Xian Shao woke up, he would definitely settle the score with him. In order to deal with the upcoming situation, Nie Tian had to increase his strength as soon as possible. In the blink of an eye, half a month passed. The morning sun shone into the room. The door was pushed open and Nie Tian walked out. After half a month of cultivation, Nie Tian's strength had increased from Heavenly Evolution 4th level to Heavenly Evolution 5th level. Being able to increase his strength by 1 level in half a month was already very fast. Half a month has passed. It's time to retrieve my absolute heaven slash. Nie Tian's eyes were sharp, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. He prepared to go to the Craftsman's Guild to retrieve his sword. Just as his figure walked out of the door of his jade mansion, something strange happened. In the sky, a rainbow-colored sword gleam shot into the sky. A huge sword intent bloomed in the sky, condensing into a huge sword shadow that was hundreds of meters long. It was vast and powerful, overbearing and sharp, as if it was going to tear the world apart. Chapter 801. Emperor Light. It's coming from the direction of the Craftsman's Guild. Could it be? Nie Tian looked at the dazzling sword image in the sky, and his heart inexplicably jolted. He immediately became excited, and his figure moved, transforming into a streak of light and flying out. Nie Tian was extremely excited as he sprinted in the Imperial City. Of course, he could tell that the Emperor Light Sword shadow in the air was emitted by the Heaven-Severing Sword. It seemed that the Heaven-Severing Sword had advanced to a Stage 9 Emperor weapon. In Nie Tian's opinion, this was impossible. Even if the Heaven-Severing Sword perfectly fused with the Blackstone, it would at most advance to a Stage 8 Spirit weapon. It would never become a Stage 9 Emperor weapon. Moreover, Huojia was only a Stage 8 craftsman. It was impossible for him to refine a Stage 9 Emperor weapon. A Stage 9 Emperor weapon could only be refined by a peak Stage 9 craftsman. Just as Nie Tian was sprinting, he suddenly sensed a figure approaching him in the dark. Someone's not friendly. Sensing the killing intent of the person in the dark, Nie Tian narrowed his eyes and spread out his divine sense. As expected, he saw a figure chasing after him. The figure was extremely fast and released a powerful saber will. His entire person was as fierce and domineering as a saber. Someone from the Burial Blade Society. Nie Tian was slightly surprised. To be able to release such a domineering saber will, it was likely someone from the Burial Blade Society. Huojia had warned him before that the Burial Blade Society was an organization more terrifying than the Heavenly Demon Cult, so he must be careful. Nie Tian did not expect someone from the Burial Blade Society to appear so quickly. Nie Tian was concerned about the heaven-severing sword and did not want to be entangled with this person. He sped up again. However, that person had no intention of letting him go and sped up as well. In the blink of an eye, Nie Tian had arrived at the square in front of the Craftsman's Guild. He had just stood still when he felt a cold saber will attacking him. Boom! Nie Tian raised his head and saw a stream of saber intent blossoming in the sky. A cold aura enveloped the entire space, and the temperature of the surrounding air plummeted. Ice crystals actually formed in the air, which was extremely strange. What a cold saber intent! Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. The person who came was very strong, and his saber intent was even more strange. It was actually infused with an icy aura. At this moment, a figure appeared in the void. This figure was like a frosty blade that could slice through the heavens and earth, sharp and piercing. Nie Tian's body shook slightly. He activated the sword of the divine wheel and the power of thunder appeared around him. The mighty thunder and lightning spread out and melted the ice in the air. In the next moment, that terrifying blade intent suddenly descended. It was like ice, like frost and snow. The air was filled with white frost and snow. A blade of ice and snow whizzed over, covering the sky and covering the earth as it slashed down. Suddenly, the entire space seemed to freeze, leaving only the cold blade intent raging in the space. Thunder Dragon! Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and the power of thunder gathered in his body. A dragon roar shook the sky, and the Thunder Dragon appeared again, clashing with the blade of ice in the air. Boom! The saber shadow and the dragon shadow collided. The power of ice and the power of thunder collided with each other. The void seemed to shatter. Countless pieces of ice fell and smashed onto the ground, instantly disappearing. Exciting! Take another strike from me! The person in the sky screamed and raised his hands high. The space immediately froze, and the will of ice gathered on the blade in an instant. Cold Tooth Strike! The person screamed and slashed down with his blade. The void shook for a moment, and the terrifying shadow of the blade, which was thousands of meters long, came crashing down like a mountain. The space within thousands of meters was directly frozen. The cold blade seemed to directly tear the space apart, and the coldness surged to both sides like waves. Huh! Feeling the power of this blade, Nie Tian's eyes froze. Immediately, the sword of the divine wheel disappeared from his body. He formed a seal with both hands, and the ground immediately shook. The ground was lifted up by an invisible force, and with a loud bang, the ground shattered and then condensed in the air. Seal of Annihilation, open! As Nie Tianling's indifferent voice fell, a huge shield of earth formed in front of him. Boom! The shadow of the blade in the air directly landed on the Seal of Annihilation. The power of the blade in the sky bloomed, and rocks flew everywhere, and sand and dust filled the sky. Immediately, Nie Tian's figure moved and he retreated thousands of meters. The Seal of Annihilation finally blocked that person's blade. In the void, that person casually waved his hand, and the coldness bloomed in the air. The flying rocks and dust were actually frozen, and then they slowly fell to the ground. This scene was very strange, as if time had slowed down. The sand and rocks in the air slowly fell, and a face appeared in front of Nye Tian. It was a very young face, about 25 or 26 years old. His facial features were resolute and cold, and there was a cold aura about him. As his figure landed, a cold intent spread in the space, and the entire square seemed to have turned into a cold winter, surging with bone-chilling coldness. "You're very good. No wonder Leng Shui died in your hands." That person's figure froze in the air, and he stared coldly at Nye Tian. His cold killing intent was on the verge of bursting out. "You're indeed a member of the Burial Blade cult." Nye Tian smiled faintly, and his face was as calm as an ancient well. This person's strength was not too strong, and his cultivation was only at the 5th level of the heavenly evolution realm. However, his blade intent was very strange, and it made his combat strength very terrifying. Without a sword in hand, Nye Tian could not unleash the power of the sword intent in his body. It was really difficult for him to rely on his sword intent to contend with the other party. If he had not used the Seal of Annihilation earlier, it was very likely that Nye Tian would have been injured by that slash. At this moment, the commotion in the square alarmed the people of the Craftsman Guild. Many people walked out, and they were all dumbfounded when they saw the entire square turned into ruins. "Bastard, who dares to cause trouble in the Craftsman Guild?" Then, a furious voice rang out. It was Hu Jia who walked over. When he saw Nye Tian's figure and then the blade user in the air, his face could not help but sink, and he shouted, "Boy Nye, who did you offend this time?" Nye Tian smiled bitterly and said, "Elder Hua, I did not offend him this time. He took the initiative to seek revenge." "Seek revenge?" Hu Jia was slightly stunned. When he saw the blade user in the air, his eyes trembled and he shouted, "Who are you? How dare you make a move in the Craftsman Guild? Are you tired of living?" That person knew Hu Jia's identity, so he did not panic. Instead, he smiled faintly and said, "Master Hu Jia, I am Lingya, a member of the Burial Blade cult. This time, I am not targeting the Craftsman Guild, but this silver-haired swordsman. He killed a member of the Burial Blade cult, so I must take his head today." His voice was calm, and there was a faint threat in his words. Burial Blade cult. Hu Jia's eyes narrowed, and he began to think. If he used the power of the Craftsman Guild to kill Lingya, it would be equivalent to dragging the guild into a quagmire. It would probably be impossible for him to stay out of this matter. It did not matter to him, but the Craftsman Guild did not belong to him alone. He had to consider others. Chapter 802. Sword. Hu Jia was stunned for a moment before he reacted. A long sword appeared in his hand. It was extremely sharp and emitted a faint glow. Although it wasn't dazzling, it gave off an undeniable sharpness. "Heavenly Slash Sword, my old friend, you're going to shine again." Nye Tian took the Heavenly Slash Sword and his aura changed instantly. He became sharp, confident, and oppressive. With the Heavenly Slash Sword in his hand, Nye Tian wasn't afraid of anyone. Looking at the sword in his hand, Nye Tian was slightly stunned. The Heavenly Slash Sword was only a 7th-rank spiritual weapon. Why did it release such a dazzling light? It was very strange. Nye Tian glanced at Hu Jia. "I'll ask him after I'm done with Lingya." 7th-rank spiritual weapon, not bad. Lingya's eyes flickered when he saw Nye Tian holding the long sword in his hand and exuding an imposing aura. Then, he smiled and said, "You're not a sword spirit, but you're able to condense such a terrifying sword intent, and you've even reached the stage of sword spirit." Although the indifferent voice was filled with surprise, it was also filled with arrogance. "You're not bad yourself, to be able to exchange one move with me when I don't have a sword." Nye Tian smiled, mocking Hu Jia. Ling Ya's eyes darkened. Lin Fan was obviously looking down on him. However, what Nye Tian said was the truth. When they exchanged blows, He didn't have a sword in his hand. Ling Ye's face stiffened. He felt a lump of anger in his chest that he couldn't expel. Brat, you're very arrogant. I, Ling Ye, specialize in killing arrogant people, Ling Ye said coldly, releasing a frosty aura from his body. Frost and snow began to fall from the sky, enveloping Nie Tian with a bone-chilling coldness. Nie Tian wasn't afraid at all. He shook his body and the coldness dissipated. His eyes flickered and he said coldly, I'm arrogant because I have the ability to be arrogant. When I don't have a sword in my hand, you can take one strike from me. But when I have a sword in my hand, you can't even take one strike from me. His indifferent voice was filled with incomparable arrogance. Since Ling Ye said that he was arrogant, then he would show him how arrogant he was. Ling Ye's face twitched violently as his facial features contorted into a sinister expression. He had seen arrogant people, and these people had all died under his blade. Nie Tian was no exception. Arrogant brat, I'll take your life with one slash. Ling Ye's figure moved slightly and the frost in the air intensified. The white frost covered the entire space with a layer of icy chill. So cold. The crowd felt a bone-piercing chill and involuntarily took a few steps back. Their gazes towards Ling Ye could not help but tremble. Ling Ye was very strong. He infused his saber intent with the intent of ice, which could even freeze heaven and earth. Nie Tian stood where he was like an unsheathed sword. His expression was emotionless, as if he had become one with the sword Absolute Heaven Slash. This was the first battle after the sword Absolute Heaven Slash was upgraded. Nie Tian wanted to kill with one strike. Let's do it. Nie Tian took a step forward and leaped into the air, facing Ling Ye with a distance of several hundred meters between them. Courting death. Ling Ye's figure turned cold as he released his icy intent, freezing the space around him. The icy intent permeated the air and crystal-clear ice crystals appeared in the air. As Ling Ye released his saber intent, the icy intent in the air became more intense. Ling Ye's ice seal, kill with one strike. Ling Ye's lips trembled as he spat out a cold voice. A huge icy intent enveloped the entire space, as if it was going to freeze time and space. Huh! Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He then smiled and said indifferently, It's a saber formation. It seems like I have underestimated you. Ling Ye was enraged by Nie Tian's words and used his strongest move. His saber intent condensed into a formation, enveloping Nie Tian within it. What a strong formation! Will Nie Tian be alright? Hua Jia saw the scene in the air and his heart skipped a beat. He was worried for Nie Tian. Following the appearance of Ling Ye's ice seal saber formation, a cold intent permeated the air. The crowd could feel the icy intent and ice crystals formed on the hair of many of them. Brat, you should be content to die under my ice seal saber formation. Ling Ye laughed coldly. Boundless icy saber intent condensed in the air and an icy saber shadow appeared. The saber intent was extremely sharp, and the air was filled with a cold saber hum. Feeling the icy intent around him, Nie Tian's expression did not change at all. His gaze was so calm that it made people's hair stand on end. Only his killing intent continued to condense and increase. Die! A cold voice rang out as Ling Ye slashed down with his saber. The icy saber intent blossomed in the air as the killing intent surged over. A dazzling white saber light tore through the air, aiming for Nie Tian. Proud sword art, madness of doomsday, reverse kill. At this moment, the corners of Nie Tian's mouth curled up. A strange smile appeared on his face as the sword intent in his body gushed forth. Rumble! The frozen space around him directly shattered. Nie Tian was like a blade of destruction, tearing apart everything in his path. His astral soul sword intent transformed into starlight that flickered in the air. His proud sword intent emitted a dazzling sword light, and his thunderbolt sword intent revolved around his thunderbolt sword intent. The three types of sword intent perfectly fused together as a gigantic sword shadow appeared in the air, causing the entire space to tremble violently. Rumble! The ice seal saber formation that enveloped Nie Tian's body suddenly shattered. Rumble! Immediately, the sword shadow and the saber shadow clashed in the air. However, the sword shadow swallowed the saber shadow. Starlight, sword light, and thunderbolts all exploded in the air at the same time. Lingya felt something was amiss as he screamed. He wanted to retreat, but it was too late. In the air, a violent wave of murderous intent exploded in the air as it pressed down on Lingya. Lingya's pupils shrunk as he found it hard to control the look of despair in his eyes. At this moment, he finally realized that the difference between him and Nie Tian was too great. Shwa! In the next second, a sword filled with killing intent slashed down. The dazzling sword light blossomed and a soft sound rang out. Lingya was sliced in half by the sword light. The moment his body was separated, it was swallowed by the powerful sword intent. Not even his bones were left. Lingya had rushed here to seek revenge against Nie Tian. He didn't expect that he wouldn't even be able to defend against one attack from Nie Tian and would be killed. The sky-piercing sword light flashed and disappeared. The cold chi dissipated as well and the space returned to normal. The entire place was dead silent. Countless pairs of eyes stared blankly at Nie Tian. They didn't know how to express the shock in their hearts. They thought that Lingya was very strong, but they didn't expect that Nie Tian was even stronger. Both of them were clearly at the 5th level of the heavenly evolution realm. One was at the spirit of the saber, while the other was at the spirit of the sword. Why was there such a huge difference in their combat strength? Nie Tian relied on his powerful sword intent to crush Lingya in one move. Any one of his sword intent was stronger than Lingya's saber intent, let alone 3 sword intents fused together. The frenzied doomsday just now was the 3rd form of the advanced 3 forms of the proud sword technique. It was the first time Nie Tian used it on Lingya. It seemed like it was overkill to use it on him. Nie Tian ignored everyone's gazes and slowly descended to Huijia's side. He raised the heaven-sword in his hand and smiled. "Thank you, Elder Hua." Chapter 803. In the room, Nie Tian and Huijia stood facing each other. "Elder Hua, I just saw the sword absolute heaven/release an imperial light that soared into the sky. What's going on?" Nie Tian did not hold back and directly asked the question in his heart. The scene just now was too strange. Although the imperial light had only flashed for a moment, Nie Tian had clearly seen it. It was indeed imperial light. It did not make sense for a rank 7 spirit weapon to release the power of imperial light. "You're asking me what's going on? I'm the one who wants to ask you what's going on." Huijia had not recovered from the shock of Nie Tian killing Lingya with a single strike. When he heard Nie Tian's question, he replied snappily. Nie Tian frowned slightly, expressing his confusion. Huijia let out a long breath and calmed down a little. He said, "Little Nie, tell me honestly, where did you get this sword?" Nie Tian was stunned for a moment before he said seriously, "I bought this sword from a street stall for 10 gold coins." Of course, he could not tell Huijia the true origin of the sword absolute heaven/. Moreover, what he said was right because he had indeed bought it from a street stall. "Really?" Huijia looked doubtful. He did not quite believe Nie Tian's words. "Really?" Nie Tian nodded solemnly. "This sword was broken at the time. The stall owner sold it to me at the price of a rank 1 spirit weapon. I modified it a few times and it became a rank 5 spirit weapon." "Is it really from a street stall?" Huijia could not help but frown when he saw that Nie Tian did not seem to be lying. He then chuckled and said, "Little Nie, I really don't know what kind of dog shit luck you have to buy a rank 9 spirit weapon from a street stall. What kind of dog shit luck is that? I even met you at a street stall." Nie Tian muttered and then pretended to be surprised. "You said that this sword is a 9th-tier Emperor artifact, What do you mean? Seeing the surprise on Ye Tian's face, Huijia chuckled and said, to be exact, this sword was once a Tier 9 Emperor artifact. However, for some reason it became damaged and you obtained it. The material of this sword is very unique. I've never seen it before. When I fused the Outsky Black Rock into the sword, it triggered the residual Emperor Light energy in the sword, which is why the Emperor Light sword shadow appeared. I see. Nye Tian smiled bitterly. He thought that the Heaven/Sword had been upgraded to a Tier 9 Emperor artifact. In the end, it was just the remnant Emperor Light from before. However, Huijia was taken aback and said, Brat, this sword is still able to seal a portion of the Monarch Light's power even though it's broken. This means that it must have been a peak 9th grade Monarch weapon in its previous life. Only this kind of peak-level Monarch weapon can trigger Monarch Light Reflection. Monarch Light Reflection, Nye Tian muttered to himself. This was the first time he had heard of this term. Nye Tian was a dabbler in the art of artifact refinement. He couldn't even compare to Huijia. At this moment, Huijia suddenly chuckled and said, Brat Nye, can you lend this sword to this old man to study for a few days? That won't do. Nye Tian was taken aback. He quickly put away the Heaven/Sword and said with a smile, I have so many enemies now. If I don't have the Heaven/Sword, my battle prowess will be greatly reduced. I don't want to die young. That's true. Huijia shook his head helplessly. He had also seen the powerful battle prowess that the Heaven/Sword had displayed in Nye Tian's hands. It was enough for him to easily deal with any opponent below the Heaven tier. Brat Nye, how is that girl Xian Miao Miao? There are only 10 days left until the day of our appointment. Since he couldn't borrow the Heaven/Sword, Huijia immediately turned his attention to Nye Tian. He looked at Nye Tian with a malicious gaze. There are still more than 10 days. It's still early. Nye Tian smiled indifferently. He looked completely confident. Fortunately, Huijia reminded Nye Tian. It was time for him to check on the situation of Xian Miao Miao and the others. Just as Nye Tian was about to leave, Bai Luo's figure appeared. Nye Tian, someone is looking for you outside, Bai Luo said calmly when he saw Nye Tian. Someone is looking for me? Nye Tian was slightly taken aback. He obviously didn't expect that someone would come to the Artificers Guild. It's a black-clothed ancient martial art practitioner. He seems to be the 19th prince's man, Bai Luo said. Xian Qiu. Nye Tian was even more puzzled. He informed Huijia and turned to leave. Walking out of the guild hall, Nye Tian saw a figure in the distance. The face was unfamiliar, but the aura was familiar. It was the ancient martial art practitioner that he had injured in the Songlong Academy. Nye Tian looked at the other party. It was a middle-aged ancient martial art practitioner. He looked ordinary and his aura was restrained. However, his abilities were at the first heaven realm. He was very strong. Mr. Nye Tian. When Crow saw Nye Tian walk out, he bowed slightly in a very respectful manner. Nye Tian wanted to speak, but he didn't know how to address him. My name is Crow. I am the 19th prince's personal guard, Crow said. The people from the Heaven-Severing sect are here. They are now at the Qiu Palace. The prince invites you over. The people from the Heaven-Severing sect? Nye Tian was slightly taken aback. He immediately recalled that Xian Qiu had mentioned this faction before. The Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud was located at the intersection of 5 major factions. The Heaven-Severing sect was one of them. The 5 factions were the Mystic Moon Empire, the Blazing Sun Empire, the Konoha Empire, the Sky Sword Pavilion, and the Heaven-Severing sect. Xian Qiu had said that the Mystic Moon Empire had a good relationship with the Sky Sword Pavilion, while the other 3 factions were closer. Now that the Wind and Cloud Crusade was about to begin, the Heaven-Severing sect's sudden visit clearly had an ulterior motive. All right, let's go and meet the people from the Heaven-Severing sect. Nye Tian smiled faintly and gestured for Crow to lead the way. A moment later, Nie Tian and Crow arrived at the Xianqiu Palace. The two of them walked directly to the palace hall. Before entering the hall, Nie Tian could see from afar that there were several figures standing in the hall. Each of them had a steady aura and were not weak. Xianqiu sat in the hall. Opposite him was a man of about 30 years old. The man's expression was cold and domineering. "Who is the person sitting opposite your highness?" Nie Tian asked softly when he saw the man from afar. Nie Tian discovered that the man's cultivation was not weak. He was in the first layer of the sky-human realm. "Mr. Nie Tian, that person is the young master of the heaven-severing sect, Zhu Chen," Crow whispered to Nie Tian. Nie Tian nodded slightly and walked towards the hall. "I heard that the 19th Highness wants to enter the forbidden land of wind and cloud personally. Is that true?" Right at this moment, Zhu Chen suddenly opened his mouth and said, "The forbidden land of wind and cloud is filled with unfathomable dangers. No one has ever walked out of it alive. If the 19th Highness were to accidentally die in there, it would be a great loss to the Dark Moon Empire." A calm voice sounded, but there was a hint of mockery in it. "Thank you for your concern, Brother Zhu. Since I dare to enter the forbidden land of wind and cloud, I have the confidence to walk out alive." Xianqiu frowned and said coldly, "Is that so?" Zhu Chen smiled coldly and said, "The 19th Highness, if there is no one else in the Mystic Moon Empire, my heaven-severing sect will be happy to help. My heaven-severing sect is happy to help. Our heaven-severing sect is full of talent. There are many people who want to enter the forbidden land of wind and cloud. There are many geniuses in the Mystic Moon Empire. I don't need help." Xianqiu was stunned for a moment and said cold. Chapter 804. The young master of the Absolute Heaven sect, Zhu Chen, stared at Xianqiu with a dark expression. His voice carried an undisguised threat. "Brother Zhu, what do you mean?" Xianqiu was stunned. He did not expect that Zhu Chen would dare to speak to him with such an attitude when he came to the Qiu Palace. It seemed that Zhu Chen was here to provoke him. "19th Royal Highness, you are a smart man. You should know what I mean." Zhu Chen's expression was, "Since the Black Moon Empire has no one, it is useless for you to have so many slots. Why not give a few to the Absolute Heaven sect?" "How dare you!" Xianqiu's face darkened and he roared angrily, "How dare you!" Zhu Chen was too arrogant. He actually came to the Qiu Palace to provoke Xianqiu and ask for a slot to enter the forbidden land of wind and cloud. Zhu Chen dared to be so arrogant because the news of Xian Zhao's accident had spread among the 5 major forces. Lord North of the Heavenly Demon Cult had knocked Prince Xian Zhao unconscious. Even the patriarch of the Xian family did not dare to touch him. Once this news spread, all the forces treated the Black Moon Empire as a pushover. If Xian Zhao was still around, Zhu Chen would definitely not dare to be so arrogant. Zhu Chen was also one of the 9 demons and ranked 4th. Although he could not compare to Xian Zhao, he could suppress Xianqiu. When he came to the Black Moon Empire, Xian Yi, Xian Tianluo, and the other senior martial artists could not touch him. This was an unwritten rule among the 5 major forces. The older generation could not interfere in the negotiations between the younger generation. Because of this, Zhu Chen dared to be arrogant in the Qiu Palace. Xianqiu glared at Zhu Chen, and his expression turned uglier. "I'm sorry, I cannot give you the slot to enter the Black Moon Empire." At this moment, an indifferent voice was heard outside the hall. Then, a figure walked in. Upon seeing Nie Tian, Xianqiu's face lit up. "Mr. Nie." Zhu Chen was slightly taken aback, and then his gaze swept past Nie Tian. He seemed to not have the slightest interest in Nie Tian as he said coldly, "This young master is talking to your master. What are you barking for?" Nie Tian's strength was at the 5th level of heaven evolution, so Zhu Chen did not take him seriously at all. Nie Tian's face suddenly sank, and his gaze towards Zhu Chen contained an additional trace of killing intent that was icy cold to the extreme. What he hated the most was being called a dog by others. This was practically his reverse scale. Zhu Chun suddenly felt a surge of killing intent enveloping him as his heart involuntarily shuddered. After that, he inclined his head and stared at Nie Tian. At this moment, he suddenly felt a boundlessly vast mental pressure pressing down on him. In an instant, he directly lost control of his mind as his gaze turned sluggish. Nie Tian took a step forward, and suddenly, two sharp chees broke through the air. Pooh! In the next moment, two sounds of flesh being pierced resounded. Zhu Chen's knees had actually been pierced through, causing blood to gush out. Meanwhile, he slid down from his seat and directly knelt before Nie Tian. The instant his knees touched the ground, Zhu Chen felt an intense pain spread throughout his body, causing him to wake up immediately. He raised his head and saw a figure standing in front of him, looking at him with a mocking gaze. "Kneeling when you see your master? You're the real dog, aren't you?" Nie Tianling smiled and forcefully took a step forward. He pushed Zhu Chen aside and directly sat on the latter's seat. "Young master." The few people at the side only reacted after a long time. They also did not understand why Zhu Chen suddenly knelt. Zhu Chen's strength was at the heaven tier, while Nie Tian's strength was only at the heaven evolution realm. Even if Nie Tian was playing tricks, Zhu Chen should be able to deal with it easily. "Stinking brat, you're seeking death." Zhu Chen endured the intense pain and leaped to his feet. He suddenly turned around and glared at Nie Tian with bloodshot eyes as he roared angrily. To think that he, a dignified heaven-tier martial artist, actually knelt on the spot. How could he endure such a great humiliation? "You were the one who wanted to kneel to me. I could not even stop you. What else could I do?" Nie Tian smiled faintly, a playful and provocative expression on his face. Xian Qiu was simply stupefied. Although everything had happened before him, he had not clearly seen how Nie Tian had done it. After not seeing him for half a month, Nie Tian's strength had become even more valiant and strange. "Xian Qiu, are you going to indulge your subordinate like this?" Zhu Chen was enraged but did not dare to casually attack Nie Tian. Nie Tian's strength was too strange, making Zhu Chen fearful. Zhu Chen could only turn around and shout at Xian Qiu. Xian Qiu was stunned for a while. Then, he smiled and said, "Brother Zhu, don't speak nonsense. Mr. Nie is not this prince's subordinate. Like you, he is this prince's guest. You took the initiative to kneel to him and give him your seat. This prince admires your actions." Every single word that Chen Juechen spoke was like steel needles stabbing into Chen Juechen's heart. At that moment, Zhu Chen felt that every inch of his skin and every bone in his body was extremely uncomfortable. "Just now I was just teaching you a lesson. Don't call others dogs at the drop of a hat." Nie Tian raised his head slightly and said coldly, "The Xian Yu Empire's quota for the wind and cloud art is in my hands. If you want it, come and find me." "The quota for the wind and cloud art is in your hands?" Zhu Chen was suddenly stunned, his face full of disbelief. He sized up Nie Tian and started to ponder who he was. Xian Qiu seemed to be very polite to him. Could it be that he was really not Xian Qiu's subordinate? Nie Tian ignored Zhu Chen's question. Instead, he swept a glance at the latter, then looked at the surrounding people and said coldly, "Zhu Chen, since you said that there are many geniuses in the Absolute Heaven sect, then try using the people around you. If any of them can defeat me, I will offer the 10 quotas for the wind and cloud art with both hands. If no one can defeat me, then get lost from the Xian Yu Empire." He could already tell that the people that Zhu Chen had brought were all at the Heavenly Evolution 9th level. In other words, they were the strongest people who had entered the forbidden land of wind and cloud. They were obviously here to provoke him. However, they had chosen the wrong person to provoke in front of Nie Tian. Huh! Zhu Chen was stunned. Then, he looked at Xian Qiu and asked coldly, "Xian Qiu, can his words make the decision?" "Of course." Xian Qiu smiled and said, "The 10 quotas for the Xian Yu Empire are all decided by Mr. Nie. If he doesn't want me to go, I can't go either." Xian Qiu was very confident in Nie Tian. He had seen with his own eyes how Nie Tian and Dark North Monarch had exchanged blows. Nie Tian's strength was strange and unimaginable. The Heavenly Evolution 9th level martialists by Zhu Chen's side were very strong to others. However, in front of Nie Tian, they were all trash. Nie Tian did have the quotas for the wind and cloud art, but he only had 8. This was because Xian Yi had taken 2 quotas before he left. Chapter 805. Zhu Chen hesitated. Earlier, he had already witnessed Nie Tian's strange strength. However, he was unwilling to leave just like that. "Which one of you is willing to fight him?" Suddenly, Zhu Chen turned around and looked at his subordinate. "Young sect master, this subordinate is willing." Right after he spoke, a skinny man stepped forward and looked at Nie Tian with a sinister gaze. It seemed like he did not care about Nie Tian at all. "All right." Zhu Chen looked at that cultivator and said, "Ho Lian, you will fight." Although Ho Lian was not the top genius of the Absolute Heaven sect, his combat prowess was very strong. Furthermore, his attacks were ruthless and merciless. It was suitable for him to fight Nie Tian. "All right, let's go to the drill ground." Xian Qiu stood up and smiled faintly. This was the Great Hall, so it was not suitable for fighting. After a while, everyone arrived at the drill ground of the royal residence. Nie Tian and Ho Lian stepped onto the drill ground while the others watched from afar. "Brat, you just plotted against my young sect master. Now you will pay with your life." Ho Lian looked Nie Tian up and down with his cold eyes. Although his words were arrogant, he was actually very cautious and didn't make any rash moves. "With just you." Nie Tian smiled faintly and took a step forward. A horrifying sword intent was released and a murderous aura spread in the air. When Ho Lian felt the murderous aura in the air, his face sank slightly. Just this murderous aura made him feel suffocated. Nie Tian's combat prowess was too strong. It did not match his cultivation at all. "Brat, you are too arrogant." Ho Lian's eyes narrowed, and the ground suddenly trembled. Poisonous thorns grew out of the ground within a few hundred meters. They were like snakes burrowing out of the ground and growing wildly towards the sky. "Would attribute primordial spirit." Nie Tian's gaze froze. Then, all the sword intent in his body surged out and chopped off the poisonous thorns around him. Ho Lian's primordial spirit was of the wood attribute, but it was extremely aggressive and poisonous. This kind of primordial spirit had strong control and attack power. Coupled with the poison, it was extremely troublesome. But to Nie Tian, this kind of original spirit was almost no threat. His 9-star dragon vein physique was not even afraid of the Dark North King's Dark North Devil Chi, so why would he be afraid of a small poisonous thorn? "Kid, your strength will be suppressed by my thorny forest. Let's see how you're going to fight me." Ho Lian's aura skyrocketed, and the poisonous thorns grew even more frantically. In the blink of an eye, the area within a few hundred meters turned into a forest of thorns. "Oh!" Nie Tian's entire body was covered in thorny thorns, each of them baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, as if they wanted to tear apart heaven and earth. He sensed a powerful pressure, causing him to involuntarily smile. Not only were the thorns extremely poisonous, but they also possessed some sort of spirit power that was capable of suppressing one's opponent's strength. If an ordinary martial artist were to encounter Ho Lian, it would indeed be difficult for them to contend against him. On the other side, the eyes of the spectators burned as they stared at every movement in the martial arts practice field. Seeing that Ho Lian had trapped Nie Tian, Zhu Chen's lips curled into a cold smile, and he said indifferently, 19th Highness, your guest's strength is only SOSO. Your Highness's foresight is really disappointing to hand over the wind and cloud technique to this person." Zhu Chen suddenly felt that he had overestimated Nie Tian. If he had known that Nie Tian's strength was only SOSO, he would have directly killed him just now. The battle hasn't even started. Brother Ju, it's too early to come to a conclusion. Xian Qiu smiled faintly, his expression extremely calm. He was not worried about Nie Tian at all. He knew Nie Tian's strength better than anyone else. If he wasn't afraid of Heaven Realm martial artists, why would he be afraid of Heaven Evolution Realm martial artists? In the martial arts practice field, Nie Tian was surrounded by the poisonous thorns. He had a calm expression, but his eyes were filled with a strong sense of mockery. Brat, have you given up? When Ho Yen saw that Nie Tian was standing still, a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. He roared furiously, "Since that is the case, I will let you die a quick death." As soon as Ho Yen finished speaking, he raised his arm, and the ground trembled. The poisonous thorns became even more berserk, wreaking havoc in the air and emitting a bone-chilling cold. Poisonous gas filled the air, and the countless poisonous thorns were like giant upright snakes. It was extremely terrifying. Die! A malicious voice came from Ho Yen's throat, and the countless poisonous thorns suddenly moved, piercing towards Nie Tian. The poisonous thorns completely wrapped around Nie Tian, and his figure was submerged in the poisonous thorns. Dead! When Zhu Chun saw this scene from afar, his eyes trembled, and he revealed an excited expression. He had not expected Ho Yen to win this battle so easily. Don't worry, young sect master. That brat has been submerged in Ho Yen's poisonous thorns. No matter how powerful he is, he will definitely die a horrible death. A martial artist behind Zhu Chun said with a chuckle. It seemed like it was a foregone conclusion that Nie Tian would be killed by Ho Yen. Xian Qiu was also stunned, and he said in a daze, "No, that can't be right. Nie Tian should not be this weak. Could Ho Yen's poisonous thorns be Nie Tian's nemesis?" When he thought of this, beads of sweat appeared on Xian Qiu's forehead. If Nie Tian died, everything would be over. At this moment, Xian Qiu finally understood how important Nie Tian was to him. 19th Highness, do you still want to say that this young master spoke too early? Zhu Chun smiled provocatively, his eyes filled with contempt. Xian Qiu was stunned, not knowing what to say. You are indeed speaking too early. Just when Xian Qiu was on the verge of despair, a voice suddenly sounded out. Boom! In the next moment, a violent sound rang out. The thorny thorns that were entangled with each other directly exploded and were crushed by the terrifying sword intent. It's over. Then, a figure soared into the sky, and an indifferent voice rang out. An extremely fast sword intent bloomed in the sky, attacking Ho Yen. Bang! Ho Yen did not have any time to react. He was hit by the sword intent, and his body trembled slightly before it exploded. His flesh and blood were destroyed by the sword intent, and not even his bones were left. The poisonous thorns on the ground immediately disappeared. Everything returned to normal, and a figure stood in the sky above the martial arts arena like a sword god descending to the world. The scene was dead silent. Everyone looked at Nie Tian in disbelief, as if they were looking at a monster. He killed Ho Yen with a single sword strike. This kind of strength was strange and unpredictable. Ha ha ha! After a while, Xian Qiu burst into laughter. He looked provocatively at Zhu Chun and said loudly, "Brother Zhu, what do you think of this king's foresight now?" Zhu Chun stood rooted to the ground like a stone statue, unable to react for a long time. Ho Yen, who was at the 9th level of heavenly evolution, had been killed by Nie Tian, who was only at the 5th level of heavenly evolution. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed it. In fact, he did not know that Nie Tian had the chance to kill him in the hall, but he had not done so and had only made him kneel. Chapter 806. In the training field, Nie Tian's voice was heard, but there was no response for a long time. Zhu Chun was afraid and did not dare to respond. Nie Tian didn't want to waste words with these people. He landed beside Zhu Chun and said coldly, "Since no one dares to fight me, get the hell back to the Heaven Severing sect." Zhu Chun seemed to have woken up from a dream. He looked at Nie Tian with surprise, fear, and even fear. Originally, he had come to the Black Moon Empire to humiliate the people of the Black Moon Empire while Xian Xiao was not around. He did not expect to be humiliated in the end. Not only did he have to kneel, but he also lost a Heavenly Evolution 9th stage subordinate. He really deserved it. Young sect master, let's go, the person behind Zhu Chen said in a low voice. He inadvertently glanced at Nie Tian and could not help but tremble in fear. Nie Tian was too terrifying. He was not someone they could fight against. Let's go. Zhu Chen felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on his heart. His face was extremely gloomy, but he could not lose his temper. He could only roar angrily, turn around and leave. Brother Zhu, I won't see you out. Xian Qiu smiled proudly as he watched Zhu Chen and the others leave. Mr. Nie Tian, it's all thanks to you this time. I thank you, Xian Qiu said sincerely as he looked at Nie Tian. Nie Tian smiled faintly and did not say anything. It was natural for one to be respected with strength. There was no need to say anything else. If he was not strong, he probably would not even be able to enter the Qiu Palace, let alone receive Xian Qiu's thanks. Xian Qiu was very respectful to Nie Tian not only because of Nie Tian's strength, but also because of Nie Tian's identity. Ever since Nie Tian used the Spirit Dragon Ring to fight Mo Biming, Xian Qiu and the others believed that he was from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. Xian Tianluo even reminded Xian Qiu to be polite to Nie Tian and try his best to satisfy all of his requests. After dealing with the people from the Absolute Heaven sect, Nie Tian did not want to waste any more time. He still wanted to check on Xian Miao and the others. Your Highness! Right at that moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the skies. It was Crow. Mr. Nie Tian. Crow bowed respectfully towards Nie Tian. Crow, what's the matter? Xian Qiu saw Crow's nervous expression, and his face darkened as he asked. Your Highness, the people from Sky Sword Pavilion have arrived. Crow nodded solemnly. Sky Sword Pavilion. Nie Tian and Xian Qiu exclaimed at the same time. Xian Qiu then looked at Nie Tian and asked, Mr. Nie, do you also know about the Sky Sword Pavilion? I have. Nie Tian nodded and smiled. Sky Sword Pavilion. This was an organization that Nie Tian had come into contact with when he was in the 3000 Small World. Furthermore, he had a deep grudge with this organization. On one hand, Nie Tian had taken away the Nirvana Sacred Heart that originally belonged to Sky Sword Pavilion and killed the son of the Vice Pavilion Master. On the other hand, Nie Tian and Sun Hai had a good relationship. Jean de Bao had even become Sun Hai's disciple. Therefore, Nie Tian did not want to have any conflict with Sky Sword Pavilion. However, for the people from Sky Sword Pavilion to come at this time, their goal was probably similar to the people from the Absolute Heaven sect. Xian Qiu also thought of this and said to Crow, let them come to the martial arts practice field. Yes. Crow nodded and then disappeared. Nie Tian glanced at Xian Qiu. This guy was really cunning. Letting the people from Sky Sword Pavilion come to the martial arts practice field was obviously to use Nie Tian's strength to intimidate them. Nie Tian was also a little excited. He was very happy to see the people from Sky Sword Pavilion provoke him. His sword Dao realm had increased, and now he needed a real swordsman to test the power of his sword intent. A moment later, Crow appeared with a few figures. It's him. Nie Tian looked at those figures from afar and immediately recognized the faces of two of them. They were Sun Hai and Sikong Wuji. Ever since coming to the Sumi world, Nie Tian had not seen Sun Hai again. It seemed that the latter had successfully returned to Sky Sword Pavilion. As for Sikong Wuji, he had fought with Nie Tian in the 3000 Small Worlds and was defeated by Nie Tian. Master Sun. Xian Qiu also recognized Sun Hai and could not help but exclaim. Nie Tian did not pay much attention to Sun Hai at this moment. Instead, He was looking at Sikong Wuji because the latter's strength surprised him. Sikong Wuji's strength was actually at the 9th level of heavenly evolution. Nie Tian remembered that Sikong Wuji was only at the 1st level of heavenly evolution when he was in the 3000 small world. However, in just a few months, the latter's strength had risen to the 8th level. This speed was too strange. Sikong Wuji was not a very talented swordsman, and his willpower was also very ordinary. The speed at which his strength rose was beyond Nie Tian's expectations. Nie Tian. At this moment, Sun Hai and the others walked over. When they saw Nie Tian immediately, Sun Hai exclaimed in excitement. After coming to the Sumi world, he had been looking for Nie Tian and Jean de Bao, but he could not find them. He never thought that he would actually meet Nie Tian here. It's really him. Sikong Wuji also saw Nie Tian's face clearly. His eyes froze for a moment, and then a hint of killing intent flashed across them. Xian Xiu was stunned for a moment and asked in astonishment, "You know each other?" Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "Mr. Sun and I are friends." Xian Xiu looked at Nie Tian strangely. He was surprised that the people Nie Tian knew were all big shot. Huojia was one, and so was Sun Hai. Xian Xiu could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Since Nie Tian and Sun Hai knew each other, things would be very easy to handle. "Mr. Nie, are you okay? Is de Bao with you?" Sun Hai walked over excitedly, his voice trembling slightly. He had been very worried about Jean de Bao's safety. Now that he saw Nie Tian, how could he not ask? "Don't worry, Mr. Sun. De Bao is with me. He's fine." Nie Tian smiled faintly and did not explain too much. "Nie Tian, I didn't expect you to really dare to come to the Sumi world." At this moment, Sikong Wuji stepped over and released a huge sword intent from his body, pressing directly towards Nie Tian. Boom! Nie Tian's body shook slightly, and he also released his sword intent. The two huge forces collided in the void, causing a violent explosion. Nie Tian and Sikong Wuji both took a few steps back at the same time, and their faces did not look good. Sikong Wuji's strength had increased strangely, but Nie Tian was not the Nie Tian from before. The collision of their sword intents was actually evenly matched. Sikong Wuji stabilized his body and stared fixedly at Nie Tian. He could not hide his surprise. He did not expect Nie Tian to be able to compete with him head-on in sword intent and not be at a disadvantage at all. But how was this possible? He was currently at the 9th level of heavenly evolution and could even advance to the Sword Soul realm soon. Nie Tian was only at the 5th level of heavenly evolution and had just entered the Sword Spirit realm. How could he be evenly matched with him? "Sikong Wuji, you have already been defeated by me once. Do you want to be defeated a second time?" Nie Tian said coldly when he saw Sikong Wuji attack right from the start. Chapter 807. Sikong Wuji stared at Nie Tian with unconcealable killing intent in his eyes. Being defeated by Nie Tian in the 3000 small worlds was Sikong Wuji's greatest humiliation. Ever since he returned to the Sumer world, this matter had been on his mind. Now that he met Nie Tian, the latter had opened up the scar in his heart, which made him even angrier. This time, he not only wanted to defeat Nie Tian, but he also wanted to kill Nie Tian. Nie Tian sensed Sikong Wuji's killing intent, but his face remained calm as he asked, "Do you really want to fight me again?" "Fight." The calmer Nie Tian was, the angrier Sikong Wuji became. He growled, "Not only do I want to fight you, but I want to fight to the death with you." Sikong Wuji was already furious after being defeated by Nie Tian. Now that his opponent was provoking him, how could he tolerate it? Today, he must kill Nie Tian. Otherwise, he would not be able to dispel the hatred in his heart. "Junior brother, you can't. You can't." Sun Hai shouted before Nie Tian could speak. Both Nie Tian and Sikong Wuji were important to him. He did not want to see either of them die. Senior brother, I've already decided. You don't have to persuade me anymore. Sikong Wuji was determined and did not listen to Sun Hai's advice. At this time, Sun Hai's gaze turned to a girl in white beside Sikong Wuji. He said hurriedly, "Little junior sister, please persuade junior brother Sikong. He usually listens to you." The girl that Sun Hai called little junior sister was only 15 or 16 years old. She had delicate features, a sweet face and big eyes. She gave off a cute feeling. Her name was Lu Shan, the daughter of the Sky Sword Pavilion's pavilion master. Lu Shan acted as if she did not hear Sun Hai's words. She stared at Nie Tian with her big eyes and suddenly said, "Senior brother Sun. He was the one who took away our Sky Sword Pavilion's Nirvana Sacred Heart, right?" Sun Hai was speechless. At this time, Lu Shan was still concerned about the Nirvana Sacred Heart. "Yes." Sun Hai didn't say anything, but Sikong nodded heavily and said, "Junior sister, this is the person who took away the Nirvana Sacred Heart. The 2 traitors from the Sword Pavilion were also killed by this person." Lu Shan's brows slightly furrowed and her little face darkened with anger. She loudly said, "Fine, I approve of senior brother Sikong's fight to the death with him." Well, Sun Hai was struck dumb. He had hoped that Lu Shan would persuade Sikong Wuji, but unexpectedly, Lu Shan supported Sikong Wuji. In this case, the situation was irreversible. "Mr. Nie Tian, my junior brother and junior sister are still young, you." Sun Hai looked at Nie Tian awkwardly. Others might not know about Nie Tian's capability, but he was very clear about it. Even the people of the Sacred Light Empire had been defeated by Nie Tian, so how could Sikong Wuji be his match? In Sun Hai's opinion, a life-and-death battle between Sikong Wuji and Nie Tian was no different from suicide. But under such circumstances, he couldn't ask Nie Tian to back down. Cowering in fear of battle was a disgrace to a martial artist. Nie Tian glanced at Sikong Wuji, then looked at Sun Hai and said with a faint smile, "Don't worry, Mr. Sun. I won't kill him." Hearing Nie Tian's words, Sikong Wuji's face darkened, and he roared, "Nie Tian, what do you mean by that?" Looking at Nie Tian's attitude, it was as if he would definitely win and could directly control his life or death. Sikong Wuji was clearly not taking Sikong Wuji seriously. Nie Tian completely ignored Sikong Wuji and continued to say to Sun Hai, "Mr. Sun, I want to know what happened to Sikong Wuji." Sikong Wuji's strength had advanced from the 1st level of Heavenly Evolution to the 9th level of Heavenly Evolution in just a few months. He must have had a fortuitous encounter. Humph! Before Sun Hai could speak, Sikong Wuji sneered and said, "Are you very curious? There's no harm in telling you so that you can die knowing." Sikong Wuji's eyes were filled with pride as he said loudly, 1.5 months ago, I entered the Sword Tomb of the Sky Sword Pavilion to cultivate and integrated the sword intent left behind by the seniors of the Sky Sword Pavilion. Not only has my strength greatly improved, but what's more terrifying is that I am now a swordsman with 2 types of sword intents. 2 types of sword intents. Sikong Wuji emphasized this point and said, "Since ancient times, I am the only swordsman who has been able to cultivate 2 types of sword intents. Moreover, I am about to advance to the Sword Soul realm. What makes you think you can fight with me?" The Sword Tomb integrated the sword intent of the seniors of the Sky Sword Pavilion. Nie Tian pondered for a while, then shook his head and smiled. He had already guessed that the Sword Tomb should be the place where all the peerless swordsmen of the Sky Sword Pavilion had fallen. Sikong Wuji had obtained an opportunity to train, which undoubtedly integrated with the sword intent inheritance left behind by the swordsman, and his strength had greatly improved. This way, Sikong Wuji had 2 types of sword intents, which was indeed very terrifying. 2 types of sword intents. Xian Qiu's eyes trembled slightly, and he said in astonishment, "Is there really such a swordsman in the world?" "Yes." Sun Hai nodded slightly and said, Junior brother Sikong does have two types of sword intense. With that, Sun Hai glanced at Nye Tian again. Even if Sikong Wuji had two types of sword intense, it was impossible for him to be a match for Nye Tian. Nye Tian's strength was too terrifying and strange, and it was not something that Sikong Wuji could imagine at all. Nye Tian could not help but smile at this moment. He had to admit that Sikong Wuji was really lucky. First, he had the innate sword intent, which was one of the strongest sword intents in the world. Now, he had obtained the sword intent inheritance and possessed the second type of sword intent. These two pieces of sh*t had been very lucky. However, there was nothing he could do about it. This was fate. Whether a martial artist could reach the peak or not depended on talent and perseverance on one hand, and luck and opportunity on the other. Without these two great opportunities, with Sikong Wuji's talent and perseverance, he would at most be an ordinary swordsman, and he might not be able to reach the stage of sword momentum in his lifetime. However, with the opportunity, he had reached the stage of sword spirit at such a young age, and was about to reach the stage of sword soul soon. Nye Tian could only say that Sikong Wuji was lucky to be born into a good family. Seeing that Nye Tian didn't say anything, Sikong Wuji laughed complacently and taunted, "Are you scared, Nye Tian? Afraid?" Nye Tian curled his lips and said coldly, "The two types of sword intents you have are not your own, but you are just lucky. If you were not lucky, you wouldn't even be qualified to talk to me." Nye Tian, you... Sikong Wuji's face turned cold, and he was so angry that he couldn't say a word. However, he had no idea that he had two types of sword intents, while Nye Tian had three types of sword intents, and all three types of sword intents were extremely powerful. Especially the Star Soul sword intent and the Thunderbolt sword intent, which were even more powerful than the Ao sword intent and the Wuji sword intent. All right. Since you have two types of sword intents, you are barely qualified to fight with me. I will play with you. Nye Tian smiled faintly, as if he was coaxing a child. Chapter 808. Sikong Wuji looked at Nye Tian resentfully. He could sense the disdain in Nye Tian's eyes. This disdain was genuine. "Mr. Nye Tian, junior brother Sikong's status in Sky Sword Pavilion is not the same as before. Please show mercy," Sun Hai said to Sikong Wuji through telepathy as he looked at Nye Tian. Nye Tian nodded slightly and did not say anything else. Sun Hai felt much more relaxed with Nye Tian's assurance. "I don't believe that you're a match for senior brother Sikong," Lushan pouted and said unhappily. Nye Tian shook his head slightly and did not blame her. After all, he had swallowed the Nirvana Sacred Heart of Sky Sword Pavilion. It was normal for this little girl to be hostile to him. "Nye Tian, come on." At this moment, Sikong Wuji let out a long roar. With a stomp of his foot, his figure landed on the training ground. His entire body was emitting a strong sword intent. He stood there, looking as sharp as a sword. With a faint smile, Nye Tian blurred into action and landed in front of Sikong Wuji. Facing Sikong Wuji, Nye Tian's eyes were calm. There was no killing intent, only fighting intent. Although he did not kill Sikong Wuji, it did not mean that he would not go all out. Sikong Wuji was a heavenly evolution realm martial artist. His sword principle had reached the peak of sword spirit, and he had two sword intents in his body. He was a very good opponent. Compared to Sikong Wuji, Nye Tian's biggest advantage was his sword intent. He had three sword intents, and each of them was strong enough. They were definitely not weaker than the Wuji sword intent. "Nye Tian, I've wanted to kill you for a long time," Sikong Wuji said Nye Tian coldly. His defeat that day was the humiliation of his life. Today, he must win, and he must win beautifully. At this moment, Sikong Wuji had an exciting idea. He wanted to kill Nye Tian in one move. That's right. Only then could he eliminate the hatred in his heart. "Kill me." Nye Tian smiled faintly. There was not the slightest ripple in his eyes. He was terrifyingly calm as he said coldly, "Do you have the strength to do so? Whether I have the strength or not, you will soon know." Sikong Wuji roared angrily. A soaring murderous aura rushed out, almost condensing into a substance, and spread to the surroundings. The murderous aura was so terrifying that the entire world seemed to be filled with it. Sun Hai and the rest were thousands of meters away, but they could clearly feel the sharp killing intent coming from Sikong Wuji's body, causing them to be unable to help but be moved. "Junior brother Sikong, you're still too young." Sun Hai felt the killing intent, but he shook his head and sighed in his heart. Lu Shan, on the other hand, was both nervous and excited. She viewed Nie Tian as the Heaven Sword Pavilion sect's enemy, and couldn't wait to kill him. Xian Qiu was very calm. "Tian," Qiu said with Tian, "Tian, Xian, Tian with him, Tian." Qi Shueqiu. Although Sikong Wuji was much stronger than Holian, he was still no match for Nie Tian. "Nie Tian, I'll show you the power of my dual sword essences!" Sikong Wuji roared in the air. A powerful sword essence surged out from his body. A purple brilliance shone and enveloped his body, releasing a terrifying murderous aura. Nie Tian looked at the purple brilliance in the air and smiled. It was the second sword essence. This sword essence was very similar to the Wuji sword essence. No wonder Sikong Wuji could fuse with it. Bang! Sikong Wuji took a step and soared into the sky. He was like a shocking sword that had the power to tear the world apart. The sword essence raged in the air, and a majestic sword hum sounded like Wan Jian's wailing. "I'll take your life with this sword." Sikong Wuji looked down at Nie Tian. A sharp sword essence instantly condensed, and the seven void sword appeared in his hand. He held it with both hands and slashed down. Buzz dash! In the blink of an eye, the space was torn apart by the powerful sword intent, emitting a terrifying buzzing sound. Immediately after, the endless sword intent pressed down, the rumbling sounds continued unceasingly, the brilliance of the sword suddenly bloomed, a terrifying purple crack appeared in the space. "What a powerful sword!" Sun Hai and the others couldn't help but exclaim when they saw this scene. Sun Hai knew that Sikong Wuji had fused with the purple light sword essence and his strength had made a qualitative leap, but he didn't expect the latter's combat strength to be so strong. At this moment, Xian Qiu couldn't help but feel nervous for Nie Tian. Nie Tian looked at Sikong Wuji, who was in the air, and the corner of his mouth raised into a faint smile. He murmured, "Sikong Wuji, do you really want to kill me? This is only the first sword, and you're already impatient." The mighty sword essence above his head pressed down. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and a light flickered in his eyes. Sikong Wuji had fused the power of two sword essences. The power of this sword was extremely terrifying, but Nie Tian wasn't afraid. He could have used the heaven-shrouding totem and absolute tremor to defeat Sikong Wuji in one move, but he wouldn't do that. He wanted to defeat Sikong Wuji with his sword essence. In the next moment, Nie Tian took a step, and his figure rose against the momentum. His whole body's aura instantly soared, an endless sword essence gushed out crazily. In his hand, the absolute heaven slash appeared again. A cold light suddenly appeared on the edge of the sword, and a dazzling sword light appeared, like a sharp blade that could split the sky. 8 Desolation Sword. Nie Tianling's indifferent voice sounded. The sword essence around his body immediately condensed, and then bombarded like a stormy sea. Suddenly, the majestic sword essence gushed out. Boom! Boom! In the void, two pure sword essences collided with each other. The terrible sword essence tore everything apart, and the space began to wail. This was a battle between two sword essences, and it was extremely terrifying. Both Nie Tian and Sikong Wuji's sword essences were very terrifying. The space within thousands of meters was covered by the sword essences, and it became an ocean of sword essences. The two figures were completely submerged in the ocean of sword essences. Sun Hai and the others could no longer see the figures of Nie Tian and Sikong Wuji. They could only see the endless sword essences colliding with each other, devouring each other, and tearing each other apart. Sun Hai was stunned and his tongue began to spin. He didn't know what to say. He didn't expect the battle between the two to be so violent and direct. This was a real battle between sword essences. Senior brother Sun, who won? Lu Shan couldn't see anything, and her forehead was covered with dense sweat. She didn't expect that there would be such terrifying swordsmen in this world, apart from the swordsman of Sky Sword Pavilion. Sun Hai shook his head slightly. He also didn't know how the battle was going. The battle between sword essences in the air lasted for a few minutes. After that, the sword essences gradually weakened, and the space gradually became clear. Two figures appeared in front of everyone. Nie Tian's figure stood in the air, holding a long sword in his hand. His silver hair fluttered in the wind, and he looked like a sword god. On the other hand, Sikong Wuji was covered with blood, and he was panting heavily on the spot. His eyes were filled with unconcealable fear. There was no doubt that Sikong Wuji lost. In this battle of sword essences, Nie Tian finally won. "You lost," Nie Tian said lightly, and then his figure moved, preparing to leave. He didn't want to waste his breath on a person like Sikong Wuji, so he chose to end the battle directly. "Impossible!" Suddenly, Sikong Wuji roared, "I don't believe it! I'm going to kill you!" Chapter 809. Sikong Wuji was defeated. Nie Tian didn't kill him, but he wasn't convinced. He attacked from behind and wanted to kill Nie Tian. This was an unexpected scene that no one could have imagined. "Junior brother, don't!" Sun Hai was the first to react. He screamed and his back was covered in cold sweat. "Senior brother!" Lu Shan screamed. She didn't expect Sikong Wuji to attack from behind. "You're courting death." Nie Tian felt a gust of cold wind behind him. His eyes flashed with killing intent. He turned around and stabbed with his sword. Boom! A huge sword shadow appeared in the air and pressed towards Sikong Wuji. Ah! Sikong Wuji was already an arrow at the end of its flight. He couldn't resist the attack at all. He screamed in the air and his body fell down like a meteor. When Sun Hai saw this scene, his figure flashed and caught Sikong Wuji before he landed on the ground. "Junior brother Sikong, why did you do this?" Sun Hai let out a sigh of relief when he sensed that Sikong Wuji's aura was still there. He then landed. At this time, Nie Tian landed beside Sun Hai and said coldly, "Mr. Sun, Sikong Wuji is too impulsive and is destined to be a failure. Attacking from behind is a taboo for a swordsman. Even if he succeeds, his sword principle will be tarnished and he will lose his dignity as a swordsman. If Sky Sword Pavilion still treats a swordsman like him as a treasure, I can only give you 4 words. Take care." Sikong Wuji's talent in sword principle was only average. It was just that he was luckier than ordinary people. If he had a strong mind, he might have been able to achieve something in sword principle with the 2 strong sword intents in his body. Unfortunately, he was not strong enough and was arrogant. He was destined to be mediocre. "How dare you!" Before Sun Hai could speak, Lu Shan couldn't hold her temper anymore and rebuked. Sky Sword Pavilion represents the pinnacle of sword principle in the Shumi world. You are just a swordsman from the 3,000 small world. What right do you have to criticize Sky Sword Pavilion? Even if senior brother Sikong lost to you, it was because he was careless. It doesn't mean you are stronger than him. Humph! Nie Tian cast a cold glance at Lu Shan and said in an indifferent tone, "Little girl, he was careless when he lost to me once. Is it still careless when he lost to me twice? If everyone in Sky Sword Pavilion was as careless as him, they would have already been removed from the Shumi world." "You!" Lu Shan was rendered speechless by Nie Tian's words. Her delicate face flushed with anger. Nie Tian fixed his eyes on Lu Shan and continued, "Little girl, your talent in sword Dao is pretty good, and your sword intent is also strong. If you can restrain yourself and focus on sword Dao, you'll definitely surpass Sikong Wuji in the future. But if you continue to be arrogant, you won't achieve anything in the future. I said. Tian's, Tian. Tian, 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 Ti Tian, Tian, Tian. Tian. Tian, 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 IT Tian. IT. IT, Tian, 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 T, Tian, T. I Nye Tian, Tian. T, Tian, Tian, T. Tian. Just now, Mr. Nye already showed mercy to junior brother Sikong. Otherwise, junior brother Sikong wouldn't be alive. Even though Sun Hai had asked Nye Tian to go easy on Sikong Wuji, Nye Tian could have killed him with a single swing of his sword. However, Nye Tian had already given Sun Haitian a lot of face by not doing so. Thank you, Mr. Nye. Sun Hai looked at Nye Tian and thanked him sincerely. Nye Tian nodded and didn't say anything. When he fought with Sikong Wuji, he won by a hair's breadth. Luckily, his three sword wills were strong enough. Otherwise, it would be hard to say who would win. If Sikong Wuji had entered the sword soul stage, Nye Tian wouldn't have been able to match him in a battle of sword arts alone. After his battle against Sikong Wuji, Nye Tian's sword intent had been tempered and sharpened. He was in the sword spirit realm. Above that was the sword soul, and the sword profound. Nye Tian still had a long way to go before he could reach the pinnacle of sword arts he had achieved in his previous life. Sikong Wuji was knocked out by Nye Tian again and was seriously injured. He would need at least 10 days to half a month to recover. Sun Hai told Xian Qiu that he would stay in Qiu Palace for half a month. Of course, Xian Qiu agreed. It would be best if he could ally with the Sky Sword Pavilion in the upcoming Wind Cloud art. The Sky Sword Pavilion was very strong, and it could be said to be the strongest of the 5 great forces. If they joined hands with the Sky Sword Pavilion, they would have an additional layer of protection in the forbidden land of wind and cloud. Xian Qiu looked at Nye Tian strangely. He heard from Lu Shan that Nye Tian was from the 3,000 small worlds, but he didn't know if it was true. If it was true, Nye Tian was too scary. He grew up in the 3,000 small worlds and had such strength. It was unimaginable. Xian Qiu was sure that Nye Tian was from the Demon Dragon Abyss. He wondered if the Demon Dragon Abyss had a force in the lower world. After making arrangements for Sikong Wuji and the others, Nye Tian prepared to take Sun Hai to see Jean de Bao. "Senior, I want to go with you," Lu Shan suddenly said when the two were about to leave. "Junior, I want to see my disciple." "You don't need to come with me," Sun Hai said with a frown. He didn't mind, but Lu Shan was very hostile to Nye Tian. It would be bad if there was a conflict between the two. Lu Shan looked at Nye Tian and said, "Do you want me to come with you?" Nye Tian was speechless. This girl was very unruly. After thinking for a while, Nye Tian said, "It's up to you. You have legs. I don't care where you want to go." "Then I'll take it as you agree," Lu Shan nodded and said solemnly. Nye Tian and Sun Hai looked at each other and were speechless. That was an agreement. The three left the Qiu Palace and came to the main street of the Imperial City. "Mr. Nye Tian, why are you with the 19th Prince of the Imperial City?" Sun Hai looked at Nye Tian and asked curiously. Nye Tian didn't hide it and told him what happened after he came to the Shumi world. "So, you decide the wind and cloud duel in the Imperial City?" Sun Hai was shocked after hearing Nye Tian's words. Although Nye Tian said it casually, Sun Hai felt that it wasn't easy for Nye Tian to come this far. "Yes," Nye Tian nodded and said, "I want de Bao to come with me to the forbidden land of wind and cloud." Sun Hai was Jean de Bao's teacher after all. He had to discuss this with him. Sun Hai looked a little embarrassed and said, "De Bao is too weak. If he enters the forbidden land of wind and cloud, I'm afraid." Chapter 8:10. All right. Seeing Nye Tian's solemn expression, Sun Hai finally nodded. "If de Bao is willing, I have no objections." "He will be willing." Nie Tian nodded with a confident smile. Debeo trusted Nie Tian very much. Even his teacher, Sun Hai, could not replace this kind of trust. As long as Nie Tian said it, Debeo would dare to go through mountains of blades and seas of fire. Senior brother, I also want to participate in the wind cloud contest. Lu Shan suddenly looked at Sun Hai and said with a serious expression. Little junior sister, don't mess around. Sun Hai was startled at first, then smiled and waved his hand. Lu Shan was not weak. She was already at the first level of heavenly evolution. She was very talented to have this kind of strength at the age of 15. However, it would be a joke if she wanted to participate in the wind cloud contest. In the hundreds of years since the wind cloud contest began, almost all the cultivators who entered the forbidden land of wind were at the 9th level of heavenly evolution. However, no one had walked out alive. It was suicide for Lu Shan to enter the forbidden land of wind with her strength. Also, Lu Shan's status was too high. She was the daughter of the Sky Sword Pavilion Master. The Pavilion Master would definitely not allow her to participate. I'm not joking. I must participate in the trial of wind and cloud, Lu Shan said stubbornly. Sun Hai glanced at her, sweat beading on his forehead. This little girl couldn't be serious, right? He knew that Lu Shan was very stubborn, just like her Pavilion Master father. Once she decided on something, she would not change her mind. If she really wanted to participate in the wind cloud contest, no one could change her mind unless she was tied up. Junior sister, participating in the wind cloud contest is not a small matter. The forbidden land of wind is full of dangers. With your strength, you will definitely die, Sun Hai said gravely. I'm not afraid. Lu Shan pouted and pointed at Nie Tian. Since he can protect Debeo, he can protect me too. Protect you? Nie Tian froze and almost couldn't react. He said in shock, Why should I protect you? Lu Shan's eyes widened and she said very seriously, You took away our Sky Sword Pavilion's Nirvana Sacred Heart and killed our people. I won't pursue this matter anymore. Can't you protect me instead? Nie Tian's face stiffened and he did not react for a long time. This little girl had a solemn expression on her face, as if what she said was very reasonable. Suddenly, Nie Tian felt that he had no reason to reject her. All right, since you have nothing to say, then this matter is settled. After I enter the forbidden land of wind and cloud, you must stay close to me and ensure my safety. Lu Shan nodded seriously, her eyes filled with unconcealable pride. Little junior sister, you can't. At this moment, Sun Hai was already on the verge of tears. If the Pavilion Master found out about this after he returned to Sky Sword Pavilion, he would definitely eat him alive. Senior brother, don't be afraid. I will take care of my father. Lu Shan giggled, revealing the liveliness of a young girl. Sun Hai had a mournful expression and thought, Little junior sister, if you take care of your father will also take care of me. Right now, Sun Hai was extremely regretful. He should not have brought Lu Shan to the Black Moon Empire. At this moment, Lu Shan was skipping in front of him. She seemed to be in a very good mood. Sun Hai looked helplessly at Nie Tian. The latter could only shrug helplessly, expressing that there was nothing he could do to help. If Sky Sword Pavilion really allowed Lu Shan to participate in the wind and cloud trial, Nie Tian would do his best to protect her. That's right, Mr. Sun, I have not gone to Sky Sword Pavilion to ask for forgiveness. Did the Vice Pavilion Master make things difficult for you? Nie Tian suddenly thought of this matter and asked. At this moment, Sun Hai's expression softened a little and he said, The Vice Pavilion Master has been in seclusion recently and is not in the pavilion. Let's talk about forgiveness in the future. Alright. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, Anyway, I still have a lot of things to deal with. I might as well visit Sky Sword Pavilion after the wind and cloud trial. Regarding Sky Sword Pavilion, Nie Tian was also a bit curious. Lu Shan had just said that Sky Sword Pavilion was the pinnacle of sword principle in the Sumer world. Nie Tian wanted to see how this pinnacle of sword principle was. Just when Nie Tian and the others were about to reach the Jade Mansion, a roar came from the void, "Don't go!" Hearing the voice, Nie Tian immediately looked up. In the air, a figure in purple was flying at an extremely fast speed, and behind it, several figures in black were chasing closely. Although they were hundreds of meters apart, Nie Tian could see very clearly with his starry sky eyes that the figure in purple was very, very familiar. That figure was none other than Rainy Thousand Leaves. She had an exquisite face and a frosty aura. Qianye. Nie Tian was astonished and his head was buzzing. He never thought that he would see Rui Qianye here. At this time, Rui Qianye should be in closed-door training in the 3000 small world. Why was she here? Mr. Nie, are you okay? Sun Hai also looked at the figures in the air, and suddenly noticed that there was something wrong with Nie Tian's reaction, so he frowned and asked, "Mr. Sun, you go to the Jade Mansion first. I have something to do, so I will go to the Jade Mansion to find you later." Nie Tian reacted and said hurriedly. Immediately, he took a step and flew into the air, chasing in the direction where Rui Qianye disappeared. He knows that woman in purple? Sun Hai looked at the direction where Nie Tian disappeared and muttered to himself, "Senior brother, where is that guy?" Lu Shan looked back and suddenly couldn't see Nie Tian's figure, so she asked in surprise, "He went to chase after someone?" Sun Hai shook his head slightly and said, "Chasing after the person just now?" Lu Shan looked into the air and vaguely saw Nie Tian's figure. Immediately, her figure moved, and she actually chased after him. Her voice echoed in the air. "Senior brother, I will go after that guy." "Little junior sister." Before Sun Hai could react, Lu Shan's figure had already disappeared. Sun Hai knew that his strength was not as good as Lu Shan's, so it was not good for him to chase after her. He could only pray in his heart that nothing happened to her. In the air, Nie Tian's figure was running wildly. Rui Qianye's speed was very fast, and the people chasing after her were also very strong. They were actually 3 heavenly evolution realm martial artists and 1 heavenly being realm martial artist. The 4 men in black were very murderous. It was obvious that they were chasing after Rui Qianye. Nie Tian was worried about Rui Qianye's safety. His figure flickered in the air, and in the blink of an eye, he was dozens of miles away from the imperial city. At this time, Rui Qianye's figure suddenly descended and actually entered the Songlong mountain range. The black-clothed figures also descended and disappeared into the forest. "Oh no!" Nie Tian secretly cursed in his heart. His figure became even faster, and he chased after the place where Rui Qianye and the rest had disappeared. The Songlong mountain range was densely forested, and there were mountains and rocks everywhere. It was a great obstruction to Nie Tian's eye of the sky. Once he entered the depths of the mountain range, it would not be easy for Nie Tian to find Rui Qianye. Nie Tian's figure landed in the mountain range and stopped on a huge rock. Rumble! Just as his figure landed, the boulder actually moved with a rumble. Nie Tian's eyes trembled. He took a step, and his figure scuttled dozens of meters away. He looked back again. What appeared in front of him was not a huge rock, but a giant snake that was hundreds of meters long. Chapter 8:11. Nie Tian looked at the giant snake in front of him and narrowed his eyes. The giant snake was more than 300 meters long, and its entire body was covered in palm-sized scales. It looked like pieces of rock and was extremely hard. The strangest thing was that there was a layer of yellow halo circulating on the giant snake's body, releasing a violent aura. Beast light. Nie Tian couldn't help but tremble. The yellow halo on the giant snake was beast light, which was the sign of a rank 8 spirit beast. Beast light was equivalent to a celestial realm warrior's celestial realm, which only rank 8 spirit beasts possessed. Nie Tian didn't expect to meet a rank 8 spirit beast here. Just now, he focused all his attention on Rui Qianye and the others, so he didn't notice that there was an rank 8 spirit beast hiding here. The battle strength of a rank 8 spirit beast was comparable to a celestial realm warrior, and the giant snake in front of him was surrounded by beast light, so it should be an expert among the rank 8 spirit beasts. Even an ordinary celestial realm warrior might not be a match for it. Phew! Nyetian let out a long breath and forced himself to calm down. According to the current situation, he had to deal with this giant snake first. Chi! 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 The giant snake's triangular eyes rolled, and a violent aura rose from its body. Its giant body moved, making an ear-piercing sound. Nyetian held the absolute heaven tightly, not daring to be careless. The absolute power of this giant snake was definitely no less than a celestial realm warrior. If it hit him head-on, Nyetian would be seriously injured, if not killed. After a few seconds of confrontation, the giant snake finally couldn't stand it anymore and attacked first. Boom! Its giant body turned over, and the trees and rocks within 1,000 meters were all destroyed. A huge airwave in the space pressed toward Nyetian. Nyetian took a step, jumped up, and slashed down with his sword. A horrible sword intent bloomed in the space, condensed into a sword shadow of 100 meters, and bombarded the giant snake's head. Bang! The shadow of the sword fell and hit the head of the giant snake. However, there was a dull sound, and sparks flew in the air as if the sword intent had been distorted. Nyetian hastily retreated. When he took a closer look, he realized that his all-out attack hadn't hurt the giant snake at all. What a strong defense! Nyetian sucked in a breath of cold air. His sword strike just now was enough to instantly kill a 9th-level heavenly evolution martial artist, but it was no threat to the giant snake at all. Hiss hiss hiss! The giant snake's head shook. It was completely enraged. It flicked its tongue and a yellow light suddenly shot out. A destructive aura rushed towards Nyetian. In the space, there was no violent explosion, only a destructive force blossomed in the void. The destructive force turned into a terrifying ripple, like a ripple, spreading in all directions, enveloping Nyetian. Nyetian's eyes trembled slightly, and he quickly retreated. Although Nyetian's reaction was extremely fast, he was still touched by the destructive force. A terrible, bone-deep wound appeared on his body, and blood gushed out. In the space, the smell of blood spread, and the surroundings were filled with the smell of blood. This giant snake is so powerful! Large beads of sweat seeped out of Nyetian's forehead, but the determination in his eyes did not change. His eyes released a cold, murderous intent. Fortunately, he had the 9-star dragon vein constitution and was supported by the power of the stars. Otherwise, he would have been a corpse. The giant snake's attack and defense were above Nyetian's expectations. If he wanted to defeat his opponent, he had to show his true strength. Evil creature, since you made me bleed, I'll make you die. Nyetian growled. Since the blood had been spilled, he could not waste it. He took a step in the void, and his whole body released a terrifying murderous aura. At this moment, the blood around his body flew up, turned into a faint blood mist, and spread around his body. The forbidden move, the first move of the 3 strokes of annihilation, weeping blood soul. A cold voice sounded. Without hesitation, Nyetian slashed out with his sword. Boom! In midair, the terrifying sword intent condensed into a huge blood-colored sword shadow. The murderous aura and the destructive aura bloomed in an instant, and pressed down on the giant snake. Hiss, hiss! The giant snake seemed to have sensed that something was wrong. It quickly flicked its tongue and turned its head, trying to escape. Unfortunately, it was too late. Boom! The sword of destruction slashed down, and a 1,000-meter-long sword aura burst out. Everything around it was affected by the sword aura, and everything was destroyed. In the endless airwaves, Nyetian saw that the giant snake's body was slightly stagnant, and then it fell powerlessly. He waved his arm, and the turbid waves in the air dispersed, and saw the giant snake lying on the ground, dying. What a strong defense. It took the weeping blood soul slash head on, and it's still alive. Nie Tian couldn't help but say when he saw that the giant snake was still alive. The giant snake's strength was very strong, but it didn't know how to use it. Moreover, Nie Tian saw that its head was its fatal weakness, which was why he was able to seriously injure it. If a martial artist had this kind of strength, Nie Tian would have to pay a high price to win. Without hesitation, Nie Tian stabbed down with his sword. A sharp sword aura whistled out, and directly penetrated the back of the giant snake's head, and took out a light yellow spirit core the size of a human head. The spirit core of an 8th-rank spirit beast. It contains violent power, and can be used to refine a good spirit pill. Nie Tian smiled faintly, and put the spirit core into the space ring. After getting rid of the giant snake, Nie Tian's face was filled with worry. He looked around, and there was no sign of Rui Qianyu and the others within 10 kilometers. Oh no! Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and he frowned. Rui Qianyu has just arrived in the Meru world, and her strength is at most at the first stage of heavenly evolution. The people chasing after her are all above the 9th stage of heavenly evolution. If they catch up to her, she will definitely die. Nie Tian didn't know how Rui Qianyu had provoked such a powerful opponent. He was worried about her safety, so he left immediately and began to search. After a while, Nie Tian finally found some clues. He saw traces of a fight on the ground, but there was no blood. Following the aura, Nie Tian quickly arrived at a canyon. The canyon was very long, but it wasn't wide. The narrowest part was only 5 or 6 meters wide. Nie Tian looked up and murmured, "This canyon is almost a dead end. It would be terrible if Rui Qianyu was trapped here." With these thoughts in mind, Nie Tian sped off. At that moment, Nie Tian suddenly sensed a figure running toward him, and he couldn't help but frown. Why is she here? Nie Tian sensed that the person behind him was none other than Lu Shan from Sky Sword Pavilion. On the other side of the canyon, dozens of kilometers away, a fierce battle was going on. "Little girl, let me give you a piece of advice. Be obedient and surrender. Don't ask for trouble." 4 men in black slowly closed in, and one of them had a sinister look on his face as he spoke in a deep voice. Rui Qianyu's eyes trembled, and her aura was ice-cold like a 10,000-year-old iceberg. Chapter 8:12. Seeing that Rui Qianyu did not speak, the cultivator in black smirked and said in a deep voice, "Do it." The other 3 cultivators chuckled and approached her step by step. Rui Qianyu was expressionless. Her arm was injured and the wound was extremely deep. Even the true meaning of heaven's evolution could not heal it. She was currently at the 1st level of heaven evolution. She could not fight back against 3 9th-level heaven evolution martial artists and 1 1st-level heaven human martial artist. "Little girl, our crown prince has taken a liking to you. That is your good fortune. Obediently come with us and be a good crown prince's concubine," a martial artist said, a lustful light flashing in his eyes. The crown prince he mentioned was not the crown prince of the Xianyu Empire, but the crown prince of the Muyi Empire. These 4 cultivators were all from the Muyi Empire. The Muyi Empire was one of the 5 major forces of the Windcloud Crusade, and its strength was similar to the Xianyu Empire. Rui Qianyu stood rooted to the ground like a block of ice. There was no expression on her face, and she was so calm that it was frightening. "This woman has not spoken a word. Could she be a mute?" one of the cultivators said with a chuckle. "It doesn't matter if she's a mute. It's fine as long as she's good-looking. The crown prince has a unique taste. If not for the fact that the crown prince has taken a liking to her, I would also want to have a taste of her." Another cultivator's eyes shone with a lascivious light, and he was about to drool. "Shut up!" Rui Qianyu suddenly spoke. At the same time, a blue light flashed in her eyes, and a powerful force surged out. The space within thousands of meters froze instantly. This sudden turn of events caught the 4 martial artists completely by surprise. Their bodies were instantly frozen, unable to move a single step. Die. Cold, Rui Qinyu spat out one word. Her eyes changed color again, and they turned pitch black like a bottomless abyss. The next moment, a dark, destructive force shot out of her black eyes, and a black brilliance bloomed in the air. It was extremely strange. The black light seemed to contain an extremely terrifying power. It was a destructive power that seemed to be able to destroy and annihilate everything. Feeling the destructive energy rushing towards them, the four cultivators' eyes widened, and they could not conceal the fear in their hearts. They never thought that Rui Qianyu would have such a heaven-defying technique. If they had known earlier, they would not have been so careless. However, it was already too late. The power of destruction enveloped the four of them, and a strange power slowly invaded their bodies. They could actually feel the power within their bodies slowly draining away. His Yuan meridians and Yuan spirit withered uncontrollably. The power of destruction represented death, represented destruction, represented the obliteration of everything. This was the power of Rui Qianyu's 9-color pupils. She had already activated the third pupil, the black pupil. Blue eyes freeze, scarlet eyes burn, black eyes destroy. The black pupil was the most terrifying of the 3 pupils, but this terrifying power required a huge amount of eye power to support it. Rui Qianyu's current eye power was insufficient to maintain the operation of the black pupil. Just as the 4 trapped people were about to lose all hope, they suddenly felt the power of destruction in their bodies recede, and the power that had disappeared returned. Shatter! At this moment, the strongest of the 4, the first level of the Heaven Realm martial artist, let out a furious roar. The 9 Yuan meridians in his body revolved crazily, and a huge force was released. With a boom, the frozen space created by Lan Tong collapsed. Ah! Rui Qianyu's eyes trembled, and she could not help but scream. Blood flowed from the corners of her eyes, and she took a few steps back, almost falling. Her power was still too weak. If she was facing a 9th-level Heaven Evolution warrior, the power of the black pupil was enough to obliterate the opponent. Unfortunately, the enemies in front of her were 3 9th-level Heaven Evolution warriors and a 1st-level Heaven Human warrior. Such a lineup was impossible for the current Rui Qianyu to contend against. What a terrifying eye! The 4 people walked out of their fear and looked at Rui Qianyu in astonishment. They never imagined that this seemingly weak girl in front of them could explode with such shocking power. Her eyes are strange. Everyone, be careful. The 1st-level Heaven Human warrior had a lingering fear and became much more cautious this time. He directly opened his Heaven territory and enveloped Rui Qianyu, suppressing the other party's Yuan spirit Yuan meridian. Rui Qianyu frowned slightly, and her exquisite face became embarrassed. She felt that her breathing was uneven, and her chest began to heave violently. This scene caused the eyes of the 4 men in black to freeze, and their eyes to stare blankly. Don't waste time, take her down. The 1st-level Heaven Human warrior calmed down and growled. They were here to capture Rui Qianyu on the orders of the Crown Prince. They could not let the Crown Prince wait too long. One of the warriors responded. Then, his expression darkened and he punched out. This punch was aimed at Rui Qianyu's lower abdomen. He wanted to destroy the latter's Yuan meridian. Rui Qianyu's eyes were too terrifying, and her strength was also very strange. It was safer to destroy her Yuan meridian. No. Rui Qianyu sensed the other party's action and shouted. Her originally tired eyes turned pitch black again, and a black brilliance shot out from her abyss-like eyes. Puff! The black power of destruction directly pierced through the fist shadow in the void and turned into a black blade that attacked the person who attacked. Ah! Before that person could react, he screamed. His chest was directly pierced, and the power of destruction surged into his body. His body fell and turned into a pile of ashes after landing on the ground. At the moment of life and death, The power of destruction that erupted from the black pupil directly killed a 9th-level heavenly evolution warrior. The other three were stunned. They looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. Who would have thought that Rui Qianyu, who was already an arrow at the end of its flight, could still kill a 9th-level heavenly evolution warrior? The three of them looked at Rui Qianyu, or more accurately, at Rui Qianyu's eyes, and they could not suppress the fear in them. However, at this moment, Rui Qianyu's body trembled, and she suddenly lost her voice. She covered her eyes with both hands and murmured in a daze, "I can't see with my eyes." The power of the black pupil was indeed terrifying, but Rui Qianyu could not control this power. She had forcefully used the power of destruction of the black pupil just now, and it had caused the black pupil to backfire. Her eyes were swallowed by the power of destruction, and she lost her sight. Rui Qianyu was as cold as ice. Even at this time, she still maintained a frightening composure. If it were anyone else who encountered this situation, they would definitely have lost their mind and screamed. But she was only stunned for a moment, and then she immediately regained her composure. This state of mind was so tenacious that it was terrifying. Rui Qianyu closed her eyes, but blood still flowed out uncontrollably. She stood on the spot, motionless, and used her divine sense to sense the three people in front of her. Chapter 8:13. Boss, what should we do? A martial artist in black saw that Rui Qianyu was blind, but he didn't dare to step forward. Instead, he asked the martial artist in the first level of the celestial human realm cautiously. The martial artist in the first level of the celestial human realm gasped and forced himself to calm down. He said in a deep voice, "Her eyes have been destroyed. She is no threat to us now. Destroy her yuan meridians and take her away." Gulp. Hearing their superior's order, the two martial artists swallowed at the same time. They didn't want to repeat the tragedy of the last one. Who knew if Rui Qianyu still had the ability to resist? Useless. Seeing that his two subordinates were cowering, the martial artist in the first level of the celestial human realm scolded and stepped forward. His aura soared to the extreme, oppressing Rui Qianyu so much that she couldn't breathe. After making sure that Rui Qianyu was under control, the martial artist in the first level of the celestial human realm trembled, and a mighty force struck at Rui Qianyu. Rui Qianyu stood where she was. She wanted to resist, but her 9 yuan meridians were suppressed, and her eyes were empty. At this moment, she had no power to fight back. She could only wait for death. Just at the moment of her life and death, a sudden change occurred. Stop! A roar exploded in the air, and then a huge sword whizzed over, blocking the fatal blow of the martial artist in the first level of the celestial human realm. At the same time, a layer of dark blue armor covered Rui Qianyu, blocking all the attacks for her. The next moment, a figure descended from the air and landed beside Rui Qianyu. It was Nie Tian. Nie Tian. Hearing the familiar voice and feeling the familiar aura, Rui Qianyu shouted in a daze. The blood at the corner of her eyes was mixed with tears. "Rui Qianyu, are you okay?" Nie Tian saw that Rui Qianyu was severely injured, especially her eyes, which seemed to be unable to open. He sensed the latter's condition and was instantly enraged. Nie Tian felt the blood in his body churning crazily. He sensed that Rui Qianyu's eyes were destroyed. "Brat, who are you?" The martial artist at the first level of the heaven realm was stunned for a moment before he reacted. His eyes were filled with cold, killing intent as he spoke. "Young man, if you want to be the hero, you should think about your own ability. You." Another warrior also came to himself and said. Unfortunately, he was interrupted by a horrible sword essence before he could finish his words. Without hesitation, Nie Tian stabbed with his sword, which was the last move of the advanced 3 moves of AO sword tactics: Mad Doomsday, Reverse Kill. The martial artist did not have time to react before his head was chopped off. He no longer had the chance to finish his sentence. "Brat, you're courting death. Another warrior suddenly became furious and attacked with a palm strike. He did not believe that a 5th-level Heavenly Evolution kid could withstand his palm strike. Get lost! In the face of a 9th-level Heavenly Evolution martial artist's all-out attack, Nie Tian did not even look at him. He directly punched out. Suddenly, the sound of a dragon's roar shook the sky. A lightning dragon appeared and instantly killed the martial artist. Not even his bones were left. Nie Tian stood where he was. His eyes were filled with extreme killing intent. His cold eyes locked onto the martial artist at the 1st level of the Heaven Realm, and his ice-cold killing intent was on the verge of erupting. The martial artist at the 1st level of the Heaven Realm was enveloped by Nie Tian's killing intent. He felt a bone-piercing chill as if he was in an ice cave. Nie Tian's strength was too terrifying. He had just arrived and killed 2 9th-level Heavenly Evolution martial artists with a sword and a punch. The 1st-level Heaven Human martial artist even suspected if the silver-haired youth in front of him really had the strength of a 5th-level Heaven Evolution. Say something. Nie Tianling looked at the black-clad cultivator, completely ignoring his opponent's strength. He spoke in a cold voice, and a starry light flashed in his eyes. Absolute trembling, he activated it. The martial artist in the 1st tier of the celestial being realm suddenly felt a powerful and inexplicable spiritual deterrence pressing down on him, instantly causing him to lose control of his mind. Then, a terrible sword intent shot out and surged into his body, like a violent beast, attacking his limbs and veins. Ah dash! The sudden pain caused the warrior to let out a heart-wrenching scream. Puff, puff, puff. The next second, the endless sword chi rushed out of the man's body and turned him into a sieve. Blood flowed all over his body, and all his meridians were destroyed, but he was still alive. No, don't kill me. The black-clothed martial artist collapsed to the ground, his mouth still trembling. Speak. Nie Tian didn't waste any time and spat out a word cold. The black-clothed martial artist was at his last gasp and said in a trembling voice, I am from the Konoha Empire. It was His Highness the Crown Prince who asked us to capture this lady. Where is she? Nie Tian's expression was so cold that it was almost dripping water. He didn't care who this person was, whether it was the Crown Prince or the Emperor. In short, this person was dead. In the Xianqiu Crown Prince's residence. The man used the last of his strength to answer in a trembling voice. Nie Tian took a step forward, and a wave of sword chi shot out, directly ending the man's life. His eyes flickered violently, and a terrible killing intent surged on his face. The people from the Konoha Empire must have appeared after he left the Xianqiu Crown Prince's residence. He didn't expect that the people from the Konoha Empire would provoke Nie Tian as soon as they arrived, before they even went to see Xianqiu. Nie Tian didn't ask Rui Qinyu too much. He could figure out what was going on even if he used his toes to think. Nie Tian. At this time, Rui Qinyu's body trembled, and she called out. Her body went limp, and she directly collapsed. Nie Tian held her in his arms and felt that the latter's breath was very weak. He quickly transferred a stream of yuan qi into her body. Rui Qinyu's complexion improved slightly, but she was still unconscious. Nie Tian, why did you run so fast? At this time, a clear voice sounded, and then Lushan's figure appeared. She landed, and when she saw the bodies on the ground, she was stunned and exclaimed, How did these people die? Did you kill all of them? Hold her. Nie Tian didn't explain anything to Lushan, and handed Rui Qinyu to her. Lushan saw that Nie Tian's face was frighteningly gloomy, and she carefully took over Rui Qinyu. When she saw the latter's face clearly, she couldn't help but exclaim, This sister is so beautiful. Let's go. Nie Tian didn't waste any time. He took a step forward, and his whole body was burning with anger. His whole body was like a volcano with black flames that could erupt at any time. Where to? Lushan hugged Rui Qinyu tightly, and her brows slightly wrinkled. Although she didn't know what the relationship between Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu was, she could guess that the relationship between the two must be unusual, or else Nie Tian wouldn't be so angry. It seemed that Rui Qianyu was chased by someone and was injured, so Nie Tian was angry. The royal residence of Xianqiu. Nie Tian replied solemnly. The royal residence of Xianqiu? Lu Shan was slightly stunned, and with a puzzled expression, she said, "Didn't we just come out from there? Why are we still going there?" Chapter 8:14. Xianyu Empire, Qiu Palace. Xianqiu sat in the main hall. Opposite him was a short middle-aged man who looked to be in his 30s. Although he had a faint smile on his face, he gave off a fierce feeling. Xianqiu looked at him with a complicated expression. This person was none other than the crown prince of Mu Yi Empire, Mu Tu. Xianqiu knew why Mu Tuo was here. Like Zhu Tian's sect, he was here to test Xianyu Empire's strength. Xianqiu had long heard that Mu Tuo was gloomy, shrewd, and very lecherous. Just now, on the way to the main hall, Mu Tuo had stared fixedly at a few handmaidens of King Qiu's mansion, and those handmaidens were so frightened that they quickly moved away. Mu Tuo did not speak, as if he was waiting for someone. "Brother Mu, what brings you to Xianyu?" Xianqiu took a sip of tea and broke the silence. Mu Tuo smiled and said, "Not really. I'm just here to see how Xianyu Empire is preparing for the trial of wind and cloud. For us 5 forces, the trial of wind and cloud is a big deal." As he spoke, he looked out of the main hall, as if he was waiting anxiously. "Brother Mu, did you come alone?" Xianqiu noticed that Mu Tuo was alone, which did not match his identity as the crown prince. "I have a few subordinates. They're doing something for me." Mu Tuo chuckled. A lustful look flashed in his eyes. His subordinates had gone to chase after a woman for him, and had yet to return. Mu Tuo could not help but feel anxious. Doing something? Xianqiu was taken aback. Thinking of Mu Tuo's lecherous personality, he immediately understood and said, "Brother Mu, this is Xianyu Imperial City. I hope you don't do anything rash." Mu Tuo was surprised to hear the change in Xianqiu's tone. He then chuckled and asked coldly, "Is Xianyu Imperial City that great?" Mu Tuo knew that Xian Shao was in trouble, so he came to Xianyu Empire this time to provoke them. The 5 forces had always been competing secretly. Xian Shao being in trouble was an opportunity for the other 4 forces. If Xianqiu could not be strong now, Xianyu Empire might be divided by the other forces in a few decades. Xianqiu's face darkened. He had not expected Mu Tuo to be even more overbearing than Zhu Chun of the Absolute Heaven sect. The Xianyu Empire has already fallen to the point of letting the dignified crown prince enter the wind and cloud forbidden land. "Do you still have the right to be arrogant in front of me?" Mu Tuo smiled cold and sized up Xianqiu with his sinister eyes. Obviously, he didn't take Xianqiu seriously at all, and he completely took Xianqiu to be a child. Xian Zhao's death and Xianqiu's participation in the wind and cloud duel were seen by the other forces as signs of the Dark Moon Empire's decline. Just think about it, if he wasn't at the end of the line, why would Xianqiu personally enter the forbidden land of wind and cloud? After Xian Zhao's incident, Xianqiu didn't want to participate in the wind and cloud duel anymore. He was already the crown prince of the Black Moon Kingdom, so there was no need for him to risk his life by entering the forbidden area. Unfortunately, the Xian family's patriarch, Xian Yi, insisted that he must participate in the art of wind and cloud. He had no choice. "You're courting death." Just at this moment, a cold and austere voice rang out. Soon after, a figure flew over from the sky, bringing with him an extremely frightening aura of slaughter. Killing intent that soared to the sky filled the hall. Mu Tuo sensed that the murderous intent was directed at him. His eyes narrowed slightly and his body moved. Suddenly, he struck out with his palm and instantly, a huge green palm shadow appeared. Boom! The formless murderous intent was blocked by the green palm shadow, and there was an explosion in the air. The void shook violently, and the entire hall trembled as if it was about to collapse. "Who is it?" Mu Tuo roared angrily, and his figure darted out. Xian Qiu was also shocked. He didn't expect that someone would dare to injure someone in his palace. It seemed that the person was very angry and wanted to kill Mu Tuo. Mu Tuo was the crown prince of the Konoha Empire. If he died in the Qiu palace, it would be terrible. The two of them rushed out of the hall, and a figure stood in the void. The figure was like a sword, sharp and austere, and emitted an extremely sharp murderous intent. The murderous intent was almost tangible, and the space within a few hundred meters was filled with a cold aura. What a terrifying murderous intent! Mu Tuo looked at the figure in the sky, and his eyes trembled slightly. Then, his face darkened and he roared angrily, "Who are you? How dare you attack me, the crown prince? Are you tired of living?" The person attacked without any explanation. Obviously, he wanted Mu Tuo's life. "Mr. Nye?" Xian Qiu was stunned when he saw the figure in the sky. He didn't expect that the person who suddenly attacked would be Nye Tian. Nye Tian and Mu Tuo shouldn't know each other. What kind of grudge could there be between them? "Your Highness Xian Qiu, do you know this person?" Mu Tuo turned around and asked when he saw the shock on Xian Qiu's face. Before Xian Qiu could speak, Nye Tian's cold eyes locked onto Mu Tuo, and he asked coldly, "You're the crown prince of the Konoha Empire? Since you know my identity, how dare you attack me? Brat, are you tired of living?" Mu Tuo looked at Nye Tian and felt the latter's murderous intent. He couldn't help but shiver. Then, his face darkened and he said coldly, "The other party's murderous intent was strong, but he was only in the heavenly evolution realm. Mu Tuo was a heavenly evolution realm martial artist. Why would he be afraid of a heavenly evolution realm martial artist? I'm going to kill you." After confirming Mu Tuo's identity, Nye Tian's lips curled into a murderous smile. He didn't waste any more time and stabbed with his sword. The sword intent around him skyrocketed, and a mighty sword aura whistled out. It bloomed into a 1,000-meter-long sword light in the sky, as if it was going to tear the world apart. Hum! As the sword stabbed out, a clear and intense sword hum sounded in the sky. A terrifying murderous aura spread out and pressed down on Mu Tuo. Mu Tuo's eyes suddenly narrowed. He didn't expect the other party to be so fierce. After knowing his identity, not only did he not stop, but he attacked even more fiercely. He clearly wanted to kill him. "You want to kill me? It's not that easy." Mu Tuo smiled coldly, and his body suddenly released a green halo. The halos rippled and formed a green armor around him. Boom! A muffled rumble rang out as the sword image in the air slashed down, striking Mu Tuo's azure armor. The air trembled violently, and the terrifying sword image actually stopped in the air, unable to advance even an inch. "Go to hell!" With a cold laugh, Mu Tuo's body shook violently, and a burst of cyan light burst forth from his body. His cyan armor shook violently, and then a cyan sword shadow burst out of it and pounced towards Nye Tian. The green sword shadow rose against the wind and kept extending in midair, pressing down on Nye Tian. It was so fast that it was impossible to dodge. Bang! With a dull sound, Nye Tian stabbed with his sword again. He used the sword force to retreat, barely avoiding the green sword shadow's attack. Chapter 8:15. Not dead. Mu Tuo raised his head to look at Nye Tian, his face full of surprise. He didn't think that Nye Tian would be able to escape in this situation without being injured. Nye Tian's expression was also very surprised. Just now, his full-strength sword attack was not able to break Mu Tuo's Konoha battle armor, and it was even reflected by a strange force. He could feel that the cyan battle armor seemed to be able to absorb his power and then reflect it back. The cyan sword shadow just now actually contained Nye Tian's own sword will, very strange. Master, this guy's original spirit is strange, it can absorb your power and then reflect it back. Corpse Demon King also noticed something and reminded Nietian. Nietian nodded. He had already realized this, and his eyes were full of caution. Xianqiu was dumbfounded. He looked at Mu Tuo with a strange expression. Mu Tuo was also one of the 9 demons, ranked 6th among them, ahead of him. Mu Tuo's strength is really strong. Just now, that sword attack of Nietian, if it was me, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to take it. Xianqiu thought. Mu Tuo not only took Nietian's sword, but also reflected the power of that sword. The cyan battle armor on his body was very strange. Xianqiu, who is this person? Mu Tuo saw that Nietian's strength was strange. His eyes turned to Xianqiu and asked cold. Xianqiu was also confused. He looked at Nietian and said, Mr. Nie, what is going on? Do you have any grudges with Crown Prince Mu Tuo? Now Xianqiu was sandwiched between the two. It was very difficult. He didn't know how Mu Tuo offended Nietian, but seeing Nietian's posture, it must be a grudge that would not rest until one of them died. But Mu Tuo's identity was not ordinary. He was the Crown Prince of Konoha Empire. If he died in Xianyu Empire, especially in the palace of the new Crown Prince, then it would be very troublesome. Xianyu Empire and Konoha Empire might start a war because of this. Xianqiu suppressed the fear in his heart. He fantasized that he could persuade Nietian and make things clear. Your subordinates are all dead. Nietian didn't answer Xianqiu. He just stared at Mu Tuo and said cold. Huh! Mu Tuo was slightly stunned, and then he came to an understanding. He actually smiled and said, Looks like you have some sort of relationship with that woman. If you want it, then this Crown Prince will give it to you. As for those subordinates of mine, they're a group of trash. If they die, then they die. Xianqiu was slightly stunned. He couldn't believe his ears. He hadn't expected that Mu Tuo would actually speak softly in front of Nietian, as if he was very apprehensive, even afraid of Nietian. At the same time, he could tell that Nietian had come to kill Mu Tuo for a woman. Tuo Mu Nietian, he killed Tian, he and Mu. Tian, Chiu and Mu and came. Mu Chiu. After killing Mu Tuo's subordinates, Nietian came to find Mu Tuo. Mu Tuo was not a fool. On the contrary, he was very smart. The reason why he gave in at this time was that he could see that Nietian was very strong enough to make him afraid. After his 4 subordinates, there was a warrior in the first level of Sky Human Realm who was also killed by Nietian. Mu Tuo saw Xianqiu's respectful attitude towards Nietian, so he guessed that the latter's status was not low. Otherwise, Xianqiu wouldn't speak so carefully. Since Xianqiu was afraid of Nietian's divine wind, he, the Crown Prince of Konoha, had to reconsider his attitude. Mr. Nie, since Crown Prince Mu Tuo has said so, let's forget about this matter. Xianqiu stepped forward and said cautiously. He didn't want to offend Nietian. Forget. Nietianling glared at Xianqiu today. The killing intent in his body didn't decrease but increased. He said coldly, Today I must kill him. No one can stop me. As his cold voice fell, Nietian took a step forward. A cold, murderous aura spread in the air and enveloped Mu Tuo. Huh! Mu Tuo felt the bone-chilling killing intent and couldn't help but frown. Immediately, he squeezed out a smile and said, Mister, it's just a woman. If you want, this Crown Prince can give you 100 or 1,000 women. I am the Crown Prince of Konoha Empire. If you really become my enemy, then you will become the enemy of the entire Konoha Empire. Have you thought about it clearly? Crown Prince of Konoha? Nie Tianling laughed and said in a deep voice, Even if you are the Emperor of Konoha, you can't escape death today. From Mu Tuo's words, he simply regarded Rui Qinyu as a plaything. Chasing after Rui Qinyu was just a whim. What was the point of keeping a person who regarded human life as worthless? Xianqiu's heart sank when he heard Nietian. He knew that it would absolutely be difficult for the matter to end peacefully today. At a certain moment in time, Xianqiu looked at Nie Tian and noticed the icy cold and resolute killing intent in the latter's eyes, and it actually caused his heart to tremble. If he had to choose a side between Nie Tian and Mu Tuo, then Xianqiu would stand on Nie Tian's side without the slightest hesitation. He'd always remembered that when the Xian clan's ancestor, Xian Yi, allowed him to participate in the trial of wind and cloud, the ancestor had specially instructed him that Nie Tian could only be friends and not enemies. Even the ancestor thought so what else did Xianqiu have to worry about? Mu Tuo's gaze constricted slightly while the killing intent that suffused the air caused him to feel cold. He faintly felt that he'd unintentionally offended someone he couldn't afford to offend. But regret was useless now. Mu Tuo hardened his heart while his expression suddenly turned cold, and he said coldly, "Stinking kid, do you really think this crown prince is afraid of you? Since you want to kill me, then bring it on." Mu Tuo thought that even if Nie Tian's strength was strange, if he fought with all his strength, he might still have a chance. "You're courting death." The corners of Nie Tian's mouth curled up into a sinister smile. His body trembled in the air, and suddenly, an endless amount of thunder and lightning surged out. Purple-gold thunder and lightning stretched for thousands of meters, and a sea of thunder and lightning appeared in the air. Nie Tian stood in the sea of thunder and lightning like the god of thunder. His whole body's aura was violent and vast. He could already see that Mu Tuo's Konoha armor was of the wood attribute, and the power of thunder and fire was the bane of the wood attribute. The power of thunder and lightning. Mu Tuo's eyes trembled when he saw a sea of thunder and lightning appear around Nie Tian. His eyes widened and he couldn't suppress the panic on his face. Nie Tian didn't say anything at all. His eyes were cold, and then he slapped down with his palm. Suddenly, a giant palm of thunder appeared, and there was a rumbling sound in the air. Heaven and earth trembled. Konoha armor. Mu Tuo immediately calmed down when he saw the lightning palm descending upon him. Azure light surged out from his body. This time, there was a faint yellow tinge to the light, as if fine sand was flowing within the light. Chapter 8:16. Rumble. As Nie Tian's tyrannical palm fell, the earth trembled, the space wailed, and all the buildings within thousands of meters collapsed, turning into ruins. Xianqiu's figure had already retreated thousands of meters away, looking at the horrifying scene in front of him with trepidation. Nie Tian's power was too strong. Even an ordinary warrior in the first tier of the celestial being realm could not burst out with such terrifying power. Die! However, at this moment, under the endless pressure of the thunder, Mu Tuo's voice suddenly rang out. In the next moment, the power of thunder blasted out from the ground, blasting towards Nie Tian in midair. It's rebounded again. Xianqiu's eyes could not help but widen when he saw this scene. Mu Tuo's cyan armor was too strange. The thunder palm was once again absorbed and rebounded. Just like the sword strike just now, it blasted towards Nie Tian. Huh! Nie Tian could feel the power of the thunder, and his eyes could not help but narrow. Only now did he realize how violent his power of thunder was, and it made him feel a deep sense of dread. A dark blue halo surged out of Nie Tian's body. The sky armor of water pole was activated, and it withstood most of the power of the thunder, but his figure was still blasted away. When he steadied himself, there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Even he was injured when he withstood the power of the thunder. Nie Tian frowned slightly, and his eyes locked on Mu Tuo on the ground. The ground around the ladder had cracked, and the ground was a mess, but Mu Tuo was standing in the same place, unscathed. "Brat, is this your power?" Mu Tuo looked at Nie Tian in the air and sneered cold. "Too weak, far from enough. This prince's Konoha armor can absorb all kinds of power, and with your strength, you want to break this prince's Konoha armor? Dream on." "Is that so?" Nie Tian wiped the blood at the corner of his mouth and smiled coldly. Kuroda wondered why even the power of the thunder, which could restrain the power of the wood attribute, couldn't break Konoha's armor. Nietion's eyes narrowed, and he used his divine sense to perceive it. He immediately discovered that there was a layer of pale yellow sand on the cyan armor. It was this layer of fine sand that greatly enhanced the defense of the Konoha armor. Master, this guy has a dual elemental earth and wood elemental spirit. At this time, Corpse Luo Demon Monarch noticed something strange and cried out in alarm. Nietion nodded solemnly. He had also noticed this. He had never thought that Mu Tuo would actually be a dual attribute essence spirit martial artist. This was out of his expectations. If it weren't for this, Mu Tuo's Konoha battle armor would have been shattered by Nietion's thunder palm. Dual attributed origin spirits were very rare, and the number of dual attributed martial artists Nietion had encountered since his rebirth was not many. Ninth Sister Nyeyuro was a light and wind dual elemental spirit. As for Tang Yuyu, he was an even rarer dual elemental spirit martial artist, so he could also be considered a dual elemental spirit. Although Mu Tuo's dual attributes were not rare, when used together, the power was very terrifying. Master, with your current strength, it will be very difficult to break his armor. If you want to kill him, I'm afraid it won't be easy. Corpse Luo Demon Monarch said worriedly. Nietion nodded and his eyes became calm. In order to break Konoha battle armor, one must have an extremely strong attack power. Nietion estimated that it would take an all-out attack from at least a Heaven Realm martial artist to completely shatter Konoha battle armor. With his current strength, even if he used a forbidden move, he might not be able to achieve this kind of power. However, at the same time, Nietion also discovered that Mu Tuo's attack power was very weak, almost non-existent. If he didn't absorb the power of other martial artists, he almost couldn't burst out any power. Boy, give up. You can't kill me. Seeing that Nietion didn't speak, Mu Tuo smiled cold, extremely provocative. Is that so? Nietion laughed. Suddenly, endless starlight surged out of his body. The endless power of the stars condensed into a giant starlight net behind him. It was the sky shrouding totem. What a strong power! The moment the sky shrouding totem appeared, Xian Qiu felt an incomparably majestic power that made his heart tremble inexplicably. This power actually made his soul tremble. This is... Mu Tuo's eyes trembled violently. Even Konoha battle armor trembled as if it felt a great threat. Nietion didn't speak at all. He put his hands together, and the sky shrouding totem pressed over. Overwhelming starlight spread out, as if a galaxy was falling. Mu Tuo stood where he was, unable to escape. The sky shrouding totem enveloped Mu Tuo. Then, a powerful boundary power was released. An oppressive aura surged into Mu Tuo's body, making him feel as if he couldn't breathe. My strength. Suddenly, Mu Tuo was shocked to find that his strength had actually decreased. His eyes trembled violently, and a terrified expression appeared on his face. The sky shrouding totem opened again, directly suppressing Mu Tuo's strength to Heaven Realm 5. Back then, Nietion's sky shrouding totem combined with Tawny's Eye of the Scar of the Dusk had directly suppressed Qianlong's strength by a major realm. At this moment, without the support of the Eye of the Scar of the Dusk, the sky shrouding totem only suppressed Mu Tuo's strength by about half a major realm. With his strength suppressed, the green battle armor around Mu Tuo's body instantly weakened. The originally vigorous life aura on his body dimmed significantly. Your strength has been suppressed. Can your Konoha battle armor still withstand my sword? When Nietion saw this scene, the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile, and his face revealed a murderous look. Given Mu Tuo's strength, it was impossible for him to break the sky shrouding totem. At this moment, he was already meat on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered by Nietion. Sensing that something was wrong, Mu Tu looked at Xian Qiu and shouted in panic, Xian Qiu, quickly tell him to stop. At this moment, he already had no strength to resist and could only seek help from Xianqiu. Xianqiu watched from the side cold. It wasn't that he didn't want to save Mu Tuo, but he didn't dare to. He didn't want to offend Nie Tian because the latter was someone he couldn't afford to offend. When he saw that Xianqiu didn't move, Mu Tuo completely panicked. He suddenly looked at Nie Tian, and a fierce look appeared in his eyes. Then he roared angrily, "This crown prince will fight it out with you!" In the next moment, Mu Tuo stomped on the ground and leaped into the air. For the first time, he took the initiative to attack. In the air, the green battle armor transformed into a giant green palm that slammed towards Nie Tian. However, such an attack was not worth mentioning at all before Nie Tian. Nie Tian didn't even glance at it. He slashed down with his sword, merciless and cold. Terrifying sword intent bloomed in the air, and sword light shot into the sky. Beneath the dazzling brilliance, it contained the coldest killing intent. Boom! There was a loud bang, and the green palm in the air collapsed. Mu Tuo's figure was drowned under the terrifying sword shadow. He didn't even have the chance to scream before he died, and not even his bones were left. Nie Tian's eyes suddenly became calm, and he put away the sky-shrouding totem. The air returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. However, the desolation on the ground was even more shocking and eye-catching. Xianqiu, who was watching from the side, was stunned and couldn't speak for a long time. Mu Tuo, the crown prince of the Konoha Empire, one of the 9 demons of the Shumi world, had died just like that. Nie Tian really dared to kill Mu Tuo, and he did it without hesitation. Chapter 8:17. After killing Mu Tuo, Nie Tian's figure descended from the air and came to Xianqiu's side. He glanced at the ruined palace hall and indifferently said, "I will bear the responsibility for Crown Prince Mu Tuo's death alone. If Konoha Empire sends someone here, tell them to come to me." Xianqiu's face turned slightly ugly as he said, "What are you talking about, Mr. Nie? We are partners, so of course we are friends. Mu Tuo's death was his own fault. You can't blame him, Mr. Nie." After witnessing Nie Tian kill Mu Tuo, Xianqiu thoroughly understood why Xian Yi told him not to offend Nie Tian and could only befriend him. Nie Tian's strength was very strong, and his mind was even more tenacious. Xianqiu saw the whole process. From the beginning to the end, Nie Tian didn't hesitate and simply didn't care about Mu Tuo's identity. A person like Nie Tian was too terrifying. Now was the best time to befriend Nie Tian, so Xianqiu certainly wouldn't let it go. Even if he had to bear the anger of Konoha Empire for Nie Tian, Xian Yi wouldn't blame him. "Thank you," Nie Tian said with a plain tone, and then left without hesitation. He asked Lu Shan to take Rui Qinyu to his jade mansion. He didn't know how Rui Qinyu's current situation was. Soon, Nie Tian arrived at his jade mansion and saw Yu Jiao coming from afar. "Nie Tian, you're finally back. Something happened to your friend." Seeing Nie Tian coming back, Yu Jiao hurriedly said, "Something happened?" Nie Tian's face sank and he growled, "Where is she? Take me there." Under Yu Jiao's lead, Nie Tian came to a small courtyard where Sun Hai, Lu Shan, and the others were. "Where's Rui Qinyu?" Nie Tian's face was gloomy as he asked in a deep voice. "In the room," Sun Hai replied. Nie Tian took a step in the air and directly pushed the door open. In the room, Rui Qinyu was lying flat on the bed. The air was filled with the smell of blood, and at the same time, there was a dark aura of destruction spreading. Nie Tian took a step forward and saw that Rui Qinyu's eyes were still bleeding, and there was a terrifying dark force gushing out from her eyes. Nie Tian narrowed his eyes and used his divine sense to sense that Rui Qinyu's blood qi was constantly draining, and her life force was weakening. If this continued, Rui Qinyu would not be able to hold on for more than half an hour. What happened? Nie Tian sensed that Rui Qinyu's blood-devouring power had appeared again, and it was even more terrifying than before. It was frantically devouring the blood in her body. Back in the chaotic abyss, Rui Qianyu's blood-devouring power was clearly absorbed by Rui Qianyu. Why would it appear again? Corpse Luo! Nie Tian yelled, and Corpse Luo Demon King came out of the chaotic original coffin. Corpse Luo Demon King leaped over, and released a dark force into Rui Qianyu's body. After a while, it came out again, and this time it was filled with blood. Master, the blood-devouring power in her body is acting up again. Corpse Luo Demon King looked terrified, and said, "The blood-devouring power is produced by the 9-color pupil. Every time it is opened, it will reappear." Rui Qianyu only transferred the blood-devouring power from Qi Tong and Lan Tong, but now that she has opened the third eye of the 9-color pupil, the blood-devouring power has reappeared. Third eye. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He did not know that Rui Qianyu had opened the third eye. Yes. Corpse Luo Demon King nodded, and said, "The third eye she opened is the black pupil, and the power of the black pupil is even more terrifying than Qi Tong and Lan Tong, so the blood-devouring power is also more powerful. Originally, she could have withstood the blood-devouring power for at least 5 years, but she forcefully used the black pupil, and caused the blood-devouring power to be stimulated, and the body was devoured. What about now?" Nie Tian did not have the time to listen to Corpse Luo Demon King, and asked, "How much time does she have?" Corpse Luo Demon King hesitated, and said, "Half an hour." Corpse Luo Demon King did not expect that Rui Qianyu could open the third eye. Martial artists with the 9-color pupil had opened the third eye, and there were very few of them. Rui Qianyu must be in a hurry to increase her strength, so she opened the third eye. She had already avenged the Blood Slaughter Palace, and killed the 2 Blood Slaughter Supreme Lords. Did she still want to take revenge? Who to take revenge on? Sky Sword Pavilion. Half an hour? Nie Tian's expression suddenly changed, and he immediately forced himself to calm down and asked, "Corpse Luo, do you have any way to alleviate the blood-devouring power?" Corpse Luo Demon King saw Nie Tian's expression, and his face couldn't help but turn solemn, but he really had no way this time. He shook his head and said, "The blood-devouring power is already out of control. If you forcibly alleviate it, it will only make the blood-devouring power more violent, and accelerate her death." Hearing this answer, Nie Tian was stunned, and his expression stiffened. Half an hour, only half an hour. After a few seconds, Nie Tian reacted, and he forced himself to calm down. "Corpse Luo, is there anything that can suppress the blood-devouring power?" Cold sweat dripped from Nie Tian's forehead. Aside from the time when Mo Rushi was unconscious, he had never been so flustered. Corpse Luo Demon King really couldn't bear to say it, but he could only say, "Master, the blood-devouring power this time is too strong, even the dragon blood can't suppress it." Nie Tian's body slightly swayed, and a terrifying look flashed in his eyes. Heaven never bars one's way. There must be a way. In the next moment, Nie Tian suddenly calmed down and said in a deep voice, "Corpse Luo, stay here and watch. Wait for me." Corpse Luo Demon King nodded. Although he already knew that there was no way, he still couldn't bear to hurt Nie Tian. "Mr. Nie, how is the lady?" Sun Hai saw Nie Tian coming out and asked. Nie Tian didn't answer and directly asked, "Do you know where to find the 10 millennia mysterious ice?" 10 millennia mysterious ice? Sun Hai was stunned for a moment, and then slightly shook his head. Nie Tian didn't stay. His figure leaped and directly left, and his voice came from the air. "Before I come back, don't let anyone enter the room." Sun Hai and the others looked at Nie Tian's figure, and they already knew that the lady inside was most likely dead. A moment later, Nie Tian's figure appeared in the Artificers' Guild. 10 millennia mysterious ice? Huojiao was stunned. He wanted to laugh, but when he saw Nie Tian's serious face, he could only swallow it and said, 10 millennia mysterious ice is a 9th-grade spiritual material. How can there be such a thing in the Sumer world? What do you want this thing for? To freeze a person. Nie Tian said in a deep voice. Elder Hua, accompany me to the Alchemist's Guild. Freezing. Nie Tian wanted the 10 millennia mysterious ice because he wanted to freeze Rui Qianyu. In half an hour, he couldn't find a way to restrain the power of the bloodsuck, so he could only freeze Rui Qianyu to delay the effect of the bloodsuck. To completely freeze a person, the best way was to use the 10 millennia mysterious ice. However, the 10 millennia mysterious ice was a 9th grade spiritual material, even rarer than the 10 millennia soul ice. It was almost impossible to find it in the Sumeru world. But even if it was impossible, Nie Tian had to give it a try. Chapter 8:18. In the inner hall of the Alchemist's Guild, a short and fat old man sat opposite Nie Tian and Fire Armor. He had a faint smile on his face, but it gave off a very sly feeling. This person was none other than the president of the Blood Moon Empire's Alchemists Guild, Jia Guang. Jia Guang's status in the Black Moon Empire was very high, not inferior to Fire Armor. The reason why Nie Tian asked Fire Armor to come along was that if he came alone, he would not even be able to see Jia Guang before he was stopped by the guards of the Alchemists Guild. Grandmaster Jia, I'm here to ask if your guild has 10,000-year mystic ice? Nie Tian asked straightforwardly. 10,000-year mystic ice? Jia Guang was taken aback for a moment. He looked Nie Tian up and down with a crafty gaze, then slowly took a sip of tea and said, 10,000-year mystic ice is a 9th grade spiritual material. What does Mr. Nie need it for? During this period of time, Nie Tian's reputation was very big in the Black Moon Empire. Yun family, Crown Prince Xianshao, and even heavenly demon cult's North Dark Lord had suffered in his hands. Nie Tian was considered to be an extremely dangerous person. However, Jia Guang was obviously not afraid of Nie Tian. No matter how arrogant the latter was, he would not dare to behave atrociously in front of him. Old Jia, human lives are at stake. Just tell me if your guild has 10,000-year mystic ice. Fire Armor was even more anxious than Nie Tian and shouted. He and Jia Guang had known each other for many years and knew the latter's character. He was very smart but liked to take advantage of others. He was not a bad person. Yes. Jia Guang took a sip of tea and chuckled. Yes. Nie Tian and Fire Armor exclaimed at the same time, unable to suppress the excitement in their hearts. It would be best if the Alchemists Guild had 10,000-year mystic ice. Even if Nie Tian went to look for Distant Night, he might not be able to find the latter within half an hour. Even if he found him, the latter might not be able to get the 10,000-year mystic ice. When Fire Armor saw the smile on Jia Guang's face, he suddenly felt that the matter wasn't as simple as it seemed. Old Jia, this is a matter of life and death. There's a young lady who only has half an hour left to live. You mustn't joke about this. Hua Jia knew Nie Tian's temper very well. If Jia Guang tried to fool Nie Tian with this matter, Nie Tian would definitely kill him. Half an hour? Jia Guang was stunned. He didn't expect time to be so tight. Grandmaster Jia, do you have 10,000-year-old mystic ice or not? I don't have time to waste on you. Nie Tian also sensed that something was wrong and said coldly. If it was any other time, Nie Tian would definitely be polite to Jia Guang. However, now that Rui Qianyu was in danger, Jia Guang was still beating around the bush. He couldn't tolerate it. Yes. Jia Guang was taken aback once more. Then, his expression became more solemn as he said, Our guild doesn't have 10,000-year mystic ice, but we have something comparable to it. What is it? Nie Tian and Hua Jia asked at the same time. Jia Guang's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. His eyes roamed between Nie Tian and Fire Armor as he uttered, Forbidden Ice Stone. Forbidden Ice Stone? Nie Tian and Hua Jia were stunned at the same time. However, they were shocked for different reasons. Nie Tian was shocked because he had never heard of Forbidden Ice Stone. Hua Jia was shocked because he didn't expect Jia Guang to have Forbidden Ice Stone. After a few seconds, Hua Jia finally calmed down a little and asked in horror, Old Jia, do you really have forbidden ice stone? Yes. Jia Guang nodded. He couldn't help but look nervous. What on earth is the forbidden ice stone? Nie Tian asked in a deep voice after seeing their reactions. Jia Guang didn't answer Nie Tian. Instead, he stood up and said, "Please follow me." After saying that, Jia Guang turned around and left. Nie Tian and Hu Jia looked at each other and followed Jia Guang. Soon, the three of them arrived outside a secret room. I didn't expect the Alchemists' Guild to have a secret room. Hu Jia looked at the secret room in front of him and couldn't help but sigh. He had known Jia Guang for more than 200 years, but he had never heard of this place. At this time, Nie Tian's eyes couldn't help but sink. He suddenly felt a very strong restrictive power from the secret room. Is the forbidden ice stone inside? Nie Tian asked after a moment of shock. You'll know when you come in. Jia Guang nodded faintly. He then opened the door of the secret room and walked in. It's so cold. The moment the door of the secret room opened, Nie Tian and Hu Jia felt a bone-piercing chill at the same time. It was as if the entire space was about to be frozen. The two of them walked in and saw an ice block that was more than 2 meters long, 1 meter wide, and 1 meter tall in the secret room. Other than that, there was nothing else. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and he frowned slightly. He sensed a cold aura from the ice block, as if he was in an ice house. Moreover, there seemed to be an unusually violent energy hidden in the ice block. It was a very terrifying restrictive force. This is the forbidden ice stone? Nie Tian suppressed the shock in his heart and asked. Yes. Jia Guang nodded and said, the forbidden ice stone comes from the snowfield tundra outside the Summer world. That's where the demon clan lives. The forbidden ice stone is regarded as a divine stone by the demon clan in the snowfield tundra. The forbidden ice stone contains an extremely terrifying restrictive force. If a martial artist is confined by the forbidden ice stone, they will be in a state of absolute stillness. A state of absolute stillness? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He was a little confused. Hu Jia sighed and explained, after a martial artist is confined by the forbidden ice stone, their body will no longer show any signs of life. They will be completely still. At this point, he seemed to recall something and said, hundreds of years ago, the martial artists of the Summer world and the demon clan of the snowfield tundra had a great war. At that time, many martial artists were confined by the forbidden ice stone. The Summer world suffered a crushing defeat, and humans dared not set foot in the snowfield tundra ever again. Hearing Hu Jia's words, Nie Tian could not help but frown. He said, the forbidden ice stone is the demon clan's restrictive weapon, right? Yes. Jia Guang and Hu Jia nodded at the same time. I need the forbidden ice stone. Nie Tian did not stand on ceremony and said directly. Since the forbidden ice stone could confine people and keep them in a state of absolute stillness, it was exactly what Nie Tian needed. Hu Jia and Jia Guang were stunned at the same time. They looked a little embarrassed. Nie Tian opened his palm and took out an ancient sheepskin scroll. He said, I won't take the forbidden ice stone for nothing. This is the demon fire diagram of the 7th demon fire moth dragon's heavenly flare. I'm willing to exchange the demon fire diagram for the forbidden ice stone. Demon fire diagram. Hu Jia and Jia Guang were stunned at the same time. They did not expect that Nie Tian would actually have a demon fire diagram. The demon fire diagram was the favorite of alchemists and blacksmiths. Moreover, the demon fire diagram in Nie Tian's hands was the demon fire ranked 7th on the demon fire list, the moth dragon's heavenly flare. The moth dragon's heavenly flare demon fire diagram was given to Nie Tian by Queen Medusa in the chaotic abyss. At this moment, he was taking it out to exchange for the forbidden ice stone. In an instant, Hu Jia and Jia Guang's eyes turned red at the same time, revealing a burning desire that could not be concealed. However, after a while, the two of them calmed down and their expressions became even uglier. Chapter 8:19. Nie Tian could see that the reason why Huijia and Jia Guang were in a difficult position was not because they were not tempted by the demon fire diagram, but because they had something difficult to say. Old Jia, tell him. Huijia nodded with a solemn face. Mr. Nie. Jia Guang nodded and looked at Nie Tian with a solemn face. As you said, the forbidden ice snowstone is the demon clan's confinement weapon. It can make a martial artist in a state of absolute stillness. However, after a martial artist is confined by the forbidden ice snowstone, the confinement power will slowly seep into the martial artist's body, confining the martial artist's meridians and even the primal spirit meridians. No matter how powerful a martial artist is, once confined by the forbidden ice snowstone, they are no different from a dead person. At this point, a look of fear flashed across Jia Guang's face. He said in a deep voice, "The most terrifying thing is that no one can break the sealing power of the forbidden ice stone. Even the people of the demon race are unable to break the seal." Nie Tian was slightly stunned and couldn't help but look at Huijia. The latter's face was solemn as he nodded and said, "Nie Tian, if you use the forbidden ice snowstone to confine your friend, you're actually killing her. Because the forbidden ice snowstone is originally a killing weapon." Nie Tian was stunned, and his face became slightly complicated. After a long time, he handed the demon fire diagram to Jia Guang and said, "I'll exchange the demon fire diagram for the forbidden ice snowstone." Jia Guang saw Nie Tian's reaction and couldn't help but be in a trance. He asked, "Mr. Nie, have you really thought about it?" Nie Tian nodded slightly. In the blink of an eye, the look in his eyes became firm and sharp again. Rui Qinyu only had half an hour to live, so he didn't have much time to think about it. Although the forbidden ice snowstone was not the best solution, it could allow Rui Qinyu to continue to live. Since the forbidden ice snowstone could confine people, there must be a way to undo the confinement. It was just that other people didn't know about it. No matter what, Nie Tian would definitely find a way to undo the confinement. "Very well, in that case bring your friend here." Jia Guang saw that Nie Tian had made up his mind, so he didn't stop him. Nie Tian agreed and no longer delayed. He immediately returned to his jade mansion. Soon, Nie Tian returned with Rui Qinyu. Forbidden ice stone. As soon as Nie Tian entered the secret room, Corpse Demon Monarch's scream came from the Primal Chaos original coffin. "You know about the forbidden ice and snow stone?" Nie Tian was taken aback for a moment before his eyes lit up. Since Corpse Luo Demon Monarch was one of the 9 great demon monarchs of the demon race, he might know how to break the seal of the forbidden stone. "Master, you want to use the forbidden ice stone to imprison her?" Corpse Demon Monarch didn't answer Nie Tian's question, but shouted even more sharply. "Is there a problem?" Nie Tian was startled and asked. Corpse Demon King swallowed his saliva, frowned and said, "The forbidden ice stone can indeed save her life for now, but forget it, there's no time to talk so much now, let's imprison her first." Nie Tian nodded. Rui Qianyu's condition was getting worse. It was better to imprison her as soon as possible. Nie Tian put Rui Qinyu on the forbidden ice stone, turned around and said to Huijia and Jia Guang, "Let's go out first." "Go out?" The two were slightly startled. Jia Guang was going to imprison Rui Qinyu himself. "My friend will do everything." Nie Tian nodded, and Corpse Demon Monarch came out of the Primal Chaos original coffin. "This is..." Huijia and Jia Guang were stunned when they saw Corpse Demon Monarch. Go out, don't delay my business." Corpse Demon Monarch impatiently waved his hand, letting Huijia and the others go out. Huijia and Jia Guang looked at each other, speechless. Nie Tian brought the others out. Since Corpse Demon Monarch knew about the forbidden ice stone, he would definitely be able to imprison Rui Qinyu with it. However, Corpse Demon Monarch seemed to want to say something just now, as if there was something he didn't say, which made Nie Tian worried. The imprison process was very smooth. After a while, the door of the secret room opened, and Corpse Demon Monarch jumped out, returning to the primal chaos original coffin. Corpse Demon Monarch, is she alright? Nye Tian entered the secret room and saw Rui Qianyu was imprisoned in the forbidden ice stone. She was quiet, with a faint smile on her face, not as cold as before. She's fine for now. Corpse Demon Monarch took a deep breath, but he couldn't hide the worry on his face. After confirming that Rui Qianyu was fine, Nye Tian said to Jia Guang, Grandmaster Jia, my friend will stay in the Alchemist Guild for now. After the Wind and Cloud trial, I will take her away. Nye Tian wasn't in a good situation right now. He had made too many enemies, and if he brought Rui Qianyu with him, it would put the latter in danger. Although the Alchemist Guild wasn't the best place, it was very safe. Although Jia Guang was a bit sly, he wasn't a bad person. With Huijia's relationship with him, Nye Tian believed that he would agree. Okay. Jia Guang nodded and agreed. However, he was also a bit worried. What if Nye Tian couldn't come back from the Wind and Cloud trial? Nye Tian knew what Jia Guang was thinking, so he said directly, If I don't come back after the Wind and Cloud trial, send her to Sky Sword Pavilions, Mr. Sun Hai. Sun Hai? Hearing this name, Huijia and Jia Guang were stunned at the same time. Rank 7 Sealer Sun Hai. You know him? He's my friend. Nye Tian replied indifferently. Huijia and Jia Guang were shocked, looking at Nye Tian in disbelief. Sun Hai was very famous in the entire Sumer world. After all, there were only a few rank 7 sealers. Nye Tian didn't explain too much to Huijia and Jia Guang. After saying goodbye, he left the Alchemist Guild. Corpse Luo, what's the situation with Rui Qianyu now? On the way, Nye Tian knew that Corpse Luo Demon Lord didn't tell him some things, so he asked directly. Corpse Luo Demon Lord already knew that Nye Tian would ask, but his expression was still very ugly. He said, Master, although the Forbidden Ice Stone can temporarily protect Rui Qianyu's life, it will cause terrible damage to her martial body. What do you mean? Nye Tian's expression sank slightly, and he continued to ask. The Forbidden Ice Stone is a taboo item of the demon race. Very few people dare to use it. Corpse Luo Demon Lord's expression was solemn as he explained, the Forbidden Ice Stone contains a very strange sealing power, called the Desolate Forbidden Power. The Desolate Forbidden Power can slowly devour a martial artist's Yuan Qi, Yuan Spirit, Yuan Meridian, and even Divine Sense. Divine Sense? Nye Tian was stunned and his expression suddenly sank. He asked in horror, could it be that the Desolate Forbidden Power will devour Rui Qianyu's Divine Sense? Corpse Luo Demon Lord nodded and let out a long breath. He said, the Desolate Forbidden Power is extremely strange. It can devour a martial artist's everything, even their life. Explain clearly. Nye Tian's expression became extremely gloomy, and his body trembled. Corpse Luo Demon Lord paused, and after thinking for a long time, he said, Rui Qianyu is imprisoned in the Forbidden Ice Stone. Her strength, Yuan Spirit, Yuan Meridian, Divine Sense, Spiritual Wisdom, Appearance, and everything else will be slowly devoured. What's the result? Nye Tian's body trembled even more.